there were thousands more. A lot of fuckers means more men to kill. Small Janumber said. Don't worry, Karstark. You look pretty enough already. Enough. Jon said through his war helm. The barbuter did not offer as much protection as Jory's visored bassinet. He stood next to the Mormont girl on the front line. Time to fight. The small Jon and Eddard joined, as the waiting came to an end. The Mormonts formed a wall, the first rank 100 men strong, with 10 rows of men. The House of the She-Bear wore the best plate armor, steel shields, and carried stout weapons. Bolton men wore fur over mail, pink cloaks decorated with red raindrops and carried red shields decorated with the flayed man, hands stretched out. House Bolton rushed forward, howling and snarling, and died on the shield wall, the pink cloaks turning red as their lifeblood spilled on the dirt and grass. Jon stabbed and stabbed, the spear tip thrusting through mail hauberks. The ground turned muddy, but a red mud as hundreds of men fell. Row after row of Boltons died. They crashed against the wall, but the Mormonts, with better armor, shields, and weapons won. There was little room for individual glory, Jon thought. The Mormonts were well rested and fighting in a row. The few enemy strikes that got past the sturdy shields glanced harmlessly off the steel plate. As Mormont men tired, fresh troops could replace the front ranks. For their frantic enemies, that was not possible. They were pushed by a sea of men to be butchered at the wall. The Liege Lord approached, wearing a distinctive set of dark grey plate armor with rondels shaped like human heads screaming in agony and a helmet with fluttering streamers of red silk that matched his pink woolen cloak. Jon wondered whether Bolton chose this armor because he was certain of victory. Roose Bolton stood out on the battlefield like a sore thumb. Snow. Bolton had to yell because of the screams of the wounded. He wants to fight you, Jon. Jory said, breathing hard from the battle. Jon motioned for Bolton to come. The Liege Lord walked closer, longsword in one hand, large shield protecting his torso in the other. Jon waited until he could see the cold pale eyes in the painted red helmet, and then he stabbed the spear down, the blade driving into the gap between the greave and the ankle plate of the sabaton. Bolton went down with a yell, clutching his wounded left leg, and Jon twisted the spear, tearing tendons and breaking bones. The Liege Lord rolled on the dirt. The small Jon stepped forward and booted the heavy shield away. Eddard Karstark readied his long axe to strike. Hold! Jon commanded. Who ordered the betrayal, Bolton? Roose Bolton dropped his sword and took off his helm. His plain colorless face looked at Jon with a disturbing stillness. You know already, Snow. Tywin Lannister. But I want you to confess and tell us what he promised you. Jon said. And why would I do that? Bolton replied. Jon jammed the spear through the other ankle, crippling the right leg. You are not the only house with sharp blades. Bolton screamed in pain. Jon lifted the bloody spear and smashed the shaft on the exposed bone, eliciting another moan of pain. You haven't won, bastard. Tywin Lannister may still take your head. Bolton said. Maybe. But you have lost, Bolton. Your men are dead. Your house is dead. And soon enough, you will be dead too. You promised this morning to repay us for our trust. You have. You led the Reach into a trap. Jon turned as he heard the whistle over his shoulder, not at all like the wind. The boats had finally arrived, piloted by Maturin Mandaeli and other men from White Harbor. Catapults launched rocks, and ballistas shot spears into the masses of confused Reachmen, their shields useless against missiles plummeting from high in the sky. The Tyrell army lost all cohesion as they desperately sought shelter, trampling and accidentally wounding each other in their retreat. Riders were thrown from dying horses, creating more confusion. Bodies began to pile up, of both the dead and the wounded. They were surrounded now on both sides. Sir Brynden Tully attacked their rear while Robb Stark and his companions assaulted the front. A knight with the sigil of a red castle on a white field fought like a demon, slaying 2 horsemen and wounding 3 others. Garland defended himself from a spiked mace while Sir Mark Mulador fell to a knight in red armor, marked with bronze runes. He had seen that wicked mace before at Riverrun in the hands of Daisy Mormont. In the Reach, girls were given dolls and sweets, and boys were taught never to hit girls. Those lessons clearly did not apply at Bear Isle. Sir Garland blocked a powerful jab. His shield held, but the force of the blow staggered him. Yield. Robb Stark's voice boomed. Yield, and you may still live. An immensely fat man in green and grey plate mail used his bulk to smash into Garland's young cousin, Garrett Flowers. The boy tottered and fell over the side of his horse, and only his right spur stuck in the stirrup stopped him from smashing into the ground. Behind him, the Blackfish disarmed Lord Oakurt. Sir Garland knew that the concentrated force of the Rivermen, the North and the Vale Knights would overwhelm them. As he blocked another vicious strike, arrows whistled in the air. One bounced off his horse's barding, but others were not so lucky. Sir Garland did not fear facing one Northman or even two fighters as skilled as Dacey Mormont. Being surrounded by 5 or 6 was too much. The situation was dire as Karstarks and Malisters appeared at his flanks. The sound of heavy hooves came from the east. A giant man on a huge destrier burst through the Reach infantry, riding back through the lines. With one-handed swings of his giant 6-foot sword, Gregor Clegane cut a bloody swath through Tyrell forces, leaving dead bodies left and right. Clegane was posted near the front of the lines with Lord Tarly. The churl must have been fleeing the field, like a dog who had lost his master. "It is the mountain that rides a northern knight with a sigil of a mailed fist," said. "Kill the bastard." A heavy man with a great grey steel helm with a red horsehair crest cried. Robb Stark's men wheeled around to face Clegane. A tall rangy man with the sign of the White Sun thrust into the mountain's right side, aiming for the armpit. The blade went between the plate but bounced off the mail underneath. The mountain turned and struck hard. The huge blade cleaved the Karstark man into two, slicing through the shoulder and the right side, severing the entire arm, like a butcher hacking a pig into pieces. "Torren!" Another fighter wearing the White Sun called. He thrust a spear hard at Clegane, the tip smashing hard on orange tabard of 3 black dogs. The barbed hook did not penetrate but was stuck in the thick plate armor. Clegane lowered the tower shield. He ripped the spear away, first from the hands of his foe, then from his breastplate. The Karstark man's gauntleted hands grabbed the mountain's right arm, in a wild attempt to wrestle away the bloody greatsword. The Karstark was strong and powerful, easily half a head taller than Garland. He looked puny compared to the mountain that rides. The mountain clubbed him with the edge of the shield, and then bashed with the shaft of the spear, driving Karstark to the ground. Had Clegane used the spear tip, his foe would be dead. Even with the shaft, Karstark lay prone and unmoving. "Grey Wind!" Robb Stark's voice rang out. "Kill the horse." The great dire wolf attacked the horse's haunches, where Clegane could not reach. Grey Wind bit into the back right thigh, severing the leg at the knee. The horse squealed its death throes and fell hard. Sir Gregor, 8 foot tall and in heavy thick plate and steel helm, stood up and swung his massive blade warily. Grey Wind snarled but did not pounce. "Find spears. The mountain is too deadly to attack with sword or mace. Use long spears and skewer him to death," Robb said. Easier said than done. Most of the cavalry had already used their spears and were down to swords and axes for close hand-to-hand fighting. Another man rode near and cried in agony when he saw one Karstark cut in half, and the other lying unconscious. In the confusion, Sir Garland took out his ivory and gold-banded horn. He blew the horn, a long and plaintive sound for a retreat. Garland knew he was abandoning the other Reachmen. But the carnage was terrible and his light cavalry had no chance of victory. The northern infantry semicircle had held. On both sides of the field, northern cavalry and footmen had snaked up. To his right, he could see the Malista winged helms and the Vance quartered shield. On the left, the northern army had nearly completed the encirclement. Umbers, Karstarks, and Stark soldiers. And companies of pikesmen held knights and infantry at bay in the tight confines of the crescent. If the sky was clear, and Tarly willing to retreat, the Reach might be able to escape with horrific losses. But the sky was full of dirt and dust, and judging from the mountain's vicious attacks on allies, Tarly must still be trapped unless Clegane killed the Lord of Hornhill in his flight. Garland realized that the Tyrell army was packed so densely that they barely had space to see, let alone fight. There were tens of thousands of men stuck in the middle, wearing heavy helmets, heavy armor, and holding shields to the sky to defend against missile attack. They were dead men, they just did not know yet. Gregor Clegane grabbed both of the Karstark horses by the bridle. He jumped on one, and in a show of stunning strength, pushed the other to block the dire wolf. Clegane galloped off, and Sir Garland followed with what was left of the Tyrell light cavalry. Garland looked back. Robb Stark and his men were not pursuing. A less disciplined commander would have hunted the mountain down. But the horses of the Northmen and the Reach aimed to close the trap shut. Robb Stark's cavalry had no opposition now on the battlefield. The enemy forces had encircled the Tyrell army on 3 sides, and now, the Northmen, Rivermen and Vale Horse would attack the rear. This had been Sir Garland's first battle. It had not gone well. The helmet sat on top of his forehead, so Jon could quench his thirst with cool lake water. There had been a lull in the fighting, and the Mormont front few ranks had taken a welcome breather. Jory, Eddard and the Smallgen rested as well while others maintained the shield wall. "Lord Snow," Jerry said. Chet waved a white flag. "They have run out of bolts and stones." Archers and crossbowmen showered the enemy with missiles, but the artillery on the boat was done. Even the wind had died down, although the sky was still grey with dust. Jon realized the cold in the water generated the wind, and that faded with time. "Jon," Arya said, pointing west. "Something strange is going on there." Across the battlefield, a half of a mile away, he could see banners, assembling. "Umber, what do you see?" Jon said. "Lots of dead cunts." The Smallgen japed. "This is serious." "What are the banners?" Jon said, standing up. "Some ponce in red shooting arrows to the left. That burning orange tree at the Golden Tooth. Green and red apples. Cranes. A golden tree. Grapes. Leaves. These Southron cunts have stupid banners." "Who is scared of grapes or apples?" the Smallgen guffawed. "They are gathering their horses," Jory said. Jon stood up, buckled his sword, and picked up the spear. "We have to go. Randil Tali is no fool," he said. "What's happening?" Arya asked. "We have trapped the Tyrell army. If Robb succeeded, then we may soon surround them on all 4 sides. Tali has realized that, and knows that if he does not break out, we will slaughter them where they stand. Charging straight into the pikes is death. His own forces prevent him from turning back. And even if they did, they would run into Robb's cavalry. Tali means to break the circle by rushing forward. He will happily kill 5,000 of his men so that 10,000 can escape." Jon said. "But we have held off their attack the entire day," Eddard said. "We have lost a few dozen, and killed many hundreds. 1,000 tired Boltons who fought their way through the field can be beaten by a shield wall. But 10,000 men rushing at us in a desperate attempt to escape is another matter. We have less than 1,000 fighters and the front line is only 100 men. Tali means to break free by overwhelming us." Jon said. "My lord, what about traps or pits or building a wall?" Jerry said. "That had been impossible before because the infantry needed to retreat before the Reach. We have little time. Also at the Red Fork, we had the cover of the Trident so we would not be attacked." STLLL. Jon thought quickly. Chet is right. A few hundred men can dig multiple trenches. 4 or 5 feet wide, 4 feet deep. Any horse charging would break their legs and it would be easy to defend. Start to dig here. But I will fight at the shield wall. "But Jon, why not fight at the trench?" Arya asked. "We can't dig the trench without cover. We will resist the Tali charge as long as possible and buy as much time possible to fortify. There are simple defenses we can build at the shield wall. We can stack enemy bodies in piles and fight behind them." Jon said. "You heard the Maester. Let's gather whatever wood we can get." Jerry cried to the other Wintertown boys. "But Jon, a few piles of bodies won't be enough to stop so many men." Arya said. "I will fight with you." "Absolutely not," Jon said. "I pray that Robb is alive, but if he is dead, you are my heir. You will be Lady of Winterfell and Warden of the North." Arya looked angry, and then sad. "I am going with you. I am just a 3rd son," Eddard said, grabbing his long axe. Jon turned to Smallgen Umber. "You are the heir to Last Hearth. Stay here and oversee the trench digging." "Fuck that. Small John spat. I am not letting a Karstark outdo me. I have every right to be a hero and protect the north. They stood face to face, or rather face to chin, given the Small John was a head taller. You will be a hero. If Tali gets past our wall, the trenches will stop the Reach from escaping. This is a direct order, Umber. If men in the army don't follow orders, everyone will die. And if I die, I need someone to take command, and bring Arya to Robb. I don't need the Small John. I can kill Southerners as well as he can. Arya yelled. Spoken like a true northern lass. All right, Snow, I will do it. But when the wolf girl is safe, I am going to kill as many of these apple and grape and turnip knights as I can. My father can bring my bones north. Small John said. Arya stormed off and Nymeria eloped after her. Ghost stayed at Jon's side. Jon hoped his sister would be safe with her wolf. Jorah Mormont strutted over and planted a wet sloppy kiss on Jon's mouth. I am not inheriting. We will fight together, Snow, and then I will drag you to Bear Isle. Watch it, Snow. She will chain you to her bed and have you satisfy all the she-bears. Small John Umber japed. That won't be a problem for me. Jon retorted. That may include her mother, Mage. Small John roared with glee. If you die, Snow, I was glad to serve with you. You are a glorious bastard. Jon supposed that was a compliment. I hope the stranger does not come for you, my lord. Jerry said. Death comes when it does. Who wants to live forever? Jon said. He left with Jorah at his side, and Eddard guarding the back. The parting with Arya had gone poorly, but her safety was more important than a fond farewell. In the end, the fortification at the front was simple, thanks to Geryon. The clever boy noticed that the broken spears and shattered weapons littered the battlefield. The Winter Town boys took a log and covered it with many projecting wooden shafts or spears. The spikes ran diagonally, like sharp XS. 3 or 4 men could fight easily behind a defense. It would not stop a massive attack, but it would slow down the enemy. Every bit of time was valuable. In time, Robb's cavalry would close the pocket and the battle would turn into mass slaughter. Further, to be trapped inside with thousands of dead bodies would be enormously distressing to the Reachmen. Robb's army could fall back to rest, retrieve their wounded and send fresh troops to relieve the front line. The encircled forces had little room to maneuver. The ability to replace troops gave House Stark an enormous advantage over the doomed Reachmen. Talis' attack finally came. Far off, Jon could see panic as the infantry on the wings pivot and charge inward. The rest of the army was herding the enemy into a tight square. When Robb attacked, the enemy would fall like wheat before a scythe. Jon knew he needed to fight for time. Desperate men surged forward, dying in great numbers. A horse raced through and jumped over a gap between 2 of the wooden defenses. Jon stabbed his spear upwards, ripping a gash so deep, the entrails fell out. Ghost put the white destrier out of its misery with a bite through the neck, and Jon stunned Sir Adam Marbrand with a shield bash to the head. A Winter Town boy snatched away Sir Adam's sword and bound the knight's hands tightly. The Mormonts fought with great fury, validating their house words, "Here we stand." Still, the horde of enemy fighters took their toll. Spears impaled many Reachmen, but the attack continued, and through the line, the Northmen gave ground before the horde. The front line lost half its number and was forced to retreat behind another set of spiked logs. The Reachmen were dying, but they had many times their number. A man at arms with a golden centaur landed a hit, knocking Jorah's mace to the ground. Jon thrust his sword through the aventail, the flexible curtain of metal that covered the neck and shoulders. The man gurgled and died, and Jorah retrieved her weapon. "Jerry!" Jon yelled. "The pikesmen must advance. Tell the drummer boys." The boy rushed to obey as Jon fended off 3 men. Ghost ripped a man's shoulder clean off, and Jon stabbed another through the throat. The 3rd soldier stepped to his right, only to slip in the pool of blood oozing from the torn shoulder. Ghost finished him before Jon could thrust his blade through the visor of the steel helmet. The Reachmen continued their attack. On his left, Eddard fell to a hard blow that shattered the shield on his left arm. Jon protected the youngest Karstark against attackers, but too much space had opened up between Jon and Jorah. Reachmen surged into the gaps, hacking away with maces, axes and swords. Thanks to Ghost, he still stood, but he wondered how much longer that would last. Many of the Mormont soldiers were down, dead or injured. The drumming began again. This time, it was not slow booming sound. Quick rat-a-tats rang through the battlefield, and the noise panicked the Reachmen. Their fear was justified. Pikesmen, guarded by archers and infantry, jogged forward in a steady formation, weapons held at shoulder level, and skewering men with ease. The pocket for the Tyrell, Lannister army continued to shrink as northern spears, arrows and swords cut down the outer ranks and survivors were forced to pull back and huddle together. Behind him, the ground was full of half-dug trenches that would prevent escape if Jon and the Mormonts fell in battle. Tarly! Jon shouted. The Lord of Hornhill wore mail and boiled leather with only a breastplate of grey steel for stronger protection. He wielded a Valyrian steel two-handed greatsword, Heartspan. Lord Tarly raised his helmet to reveal a sneer on his serious face. Surrender, Lord Tarly. You can't win. Your men are trapped. Jon said. I will not be beaten by a green boy. Tarly snarled. No, you were beaten by 2 green boys. My brother Robb and myself. Jon said. Tarly struck at the fortification, the Valyrian blade cutting through the wooden log like parchment. He grunted and stepped nearer, his sword pointed directly at Jon's torso. Randil Tarly was no Gregor Clegane, but Heartspan was 5 feet long from pommel to tip. Tarly's reach far surpassed his. The best strategy would be to tire out the Lord of Hornhill. Jon stayed on his toes, backing away at any potential strike. Tarly used the remains of the spiked log to guard his back, preventing Ghost from flanking him. Jon! Arya's voice called out. Arya! What are you doing here? Jon turned his eyes briefly. His sister ran toward him with Nymeria. Lightly armed fighters with short broad sabers charged with her. I got the boats to land. Arya said. Behind her, Chet and the other Winter Town boys shot bolts and whirled stones while the sailors reinforced the remaining Mormonts. With Nymeria, and few hundred fresh reinforcements, Tarly's forces fled. Lord Tarly though was more stubborn. He swung the two-hander straight down at his foe. Jon blocked the great sword, but the force drove him to his knees and his blade down to the ground. Time seemed to slow as Heartspan drew back. Before the Valyrian blade could come down for a killing blow, Jorah Mormont struck Tarly's shoulder with her Morning Star. The furious Lord of Hornhill thrust the blade to his left, impaling the Mormont girl through her breastplate. Before the sword could be pulled out, Jon slammed his right gauntlet into Tarly's mail codpiece. Tarly screamed in pain, and fell over. Jon smashed Tarly's ugly face with a shield, breaking his nose and knocking him out. Jon ran over to the fallen she-bear. The sword was still plunged in her body, and faint traces of blood appeared on her lips. Her eyes were still open and her teeth gritted in pain. Seems like we won't go back to Beryl together, she said, coughing flakes of blood. Jon wrapped his arms around the dying girl. I am sorry, Jory. I never meant for this. Give them hell for me, Snow. See you on the other side. Jory grinned her toothy charming smile and then her eyes closed forever. Jon held her still warm body. He could almost imagine that she was sleeping. Robb rode through the battlefield to the lake. The carnage was immense, stacks of slain men, Reachmen, Westermen, Northmen and Rivermen alike. Corpses looked the same in death, he thought. Thousands of horses lay dead and already flies buzzed over pools of blood and dead flesh. As a boy, he had thought there might be a terrible beauty in war. There was none here. War was only terrible. Robb had spared most of the enemy army. Sir Baelor Hightower had ridden unarmed to his battle guard and surrendered in the sight of many Reachmen. The heir of Old Town begged for the lives of his men. Even the North and the Rivermen had suffered thousands of deaths, and thousands more injured. Robb granted mercy despite some angry bannermen. House Stark was fierce in battle but not butchers. Wolves did not kill for sport. After Sir Baelor surrendered, a dozen other lords and knights rushed to do the same, Lord Oakert, Sir Vortimer Crane, Jon Fossoway, Orton Merryweather. He did not catch all the names. They cast down their weapons and took off their armor. Robb passed through the killing fields, shocked at the brutality of the battle. Soldiers saluted him and prisoners fell to their hands and knees as he rode by with grey wind. His guards stayed close, but after the death of so many, there was little appetite for more fighting. Men on all sides were happy to be alive. Grey Wind saw Arya, Nymeria and Ghost first. Arya, with the help of the direwolves and the Smallgen, watched over the injured and the prisoners, Roose Bolton, Adam Marbrand, Randil Tali and many more. Here too, at the edge of the God's Eye, the slaughter was immense and there were many Northmen and Rivermen dead. He smelled blood and vomit and feces, and thousands had been killed in terrifying ways, bodies mangled and limbs hacked off. Robb said a prayer over the hundreds of dead Mormonts, the bravest and most loyal of his northern army. Jon crouched over Jory's body. Robb waited in silence for his brother to rise. Author's notes. A yai is a Japanese spear, and the art of the spear is called sajutsu. The Chinese spear of the martial art movies, check out Michelle Yeoh in Crouching Tiger, is the Qian, with a leaf-shaped blade and the red horsehair tassel. Oberyn uses the yai because the blade is long and can slice, as well as stab. Myrcella is 11 when her ear is chopped off and she is disfigured in the inept Arianne Martell plot. In the show, she is older and killed with poison by Ellaria after Oberyn dies in King's Landing. Either way, it is a fairly depressing fate. Born amidst salt and smoke, beneath a bleeding star. I know the prophecy. These are the words of Marwyn the Midge to Samwell Tarly at the Citadel in the Feast of Crows. If the Lightning Lord declares Jon Snow as a High Reborn, it seems likely that the impressionable Edric would repeat the story. The Foresters are the Lords of Ironath, the largest source of ironwood trees in the north. The characters are from the Telltale game series. The medieval cream cakes are from the Inn at the Crossroads. The other Dornish food is cobbled from websites such as the Inn at the Crossroads. The Dornish are spicy. The Martells are the book version. That means Quentin is flailing in Essos, Arianne mid-20s, and Tristan 12. There are 8 sand snakes, 4 older ones with Sarala the youngest, early 20s. The 4 children of Ellaria Sand range from 14 to 6. In my mind, the sand snakes are, much, lesser versions of Arya. But Arya is super awesome. I am not sure who is to blame for Doran coming off as an idiot in the books. His whole plan is a Targaryen restoration, which makes sense when you think of how close the Martells are to the dragons in the last century. 5 Targs married Dornish. But in the book, Doran comes off as incompetent. His middle child burns to death, trying to tame a dragon. Arianne actively screws up his plans. And his revenge is dependent on Arianne marrying Viserys, who is an idiot, and then fake Aegon, where he gets suckered by Varys and Luryo. Maybe it is just an unreliable narrator, Arianne, but Doran comes off as a cartoon villain whose plots always fall apart. I thought about making the dialogue between the snakes /Arianne and Doran more strained but decided against it. First, Oberyn isn't dead, the primary source of the tensions. Second, Arianne is similar to her dad, she keeps all these secrets and plots. So none of the Martells are totally honest, which makes them incompetent. Then again, all the suspense in Game of Thrones is driven by wacky prophecies or people lying to family. The conversation that Jon and Arya have about ancient war is accurate. Most casualties are taken when the battle is lost, and the fleeing people get killed. The death toll in ancient battles are lopsided because when you flee, the cavalry can easily hunt you down. The Roman legion managed this in 2 ways. The legion was organized in 3 separate lines, the Haestati, the least trained, the Principes, experienced soldiers, and the Triarii, the veterans. The front troops, the Haestati, were inexperienced, so in theory, they were young and eager for glory. Also, they were cheap cannon fodder and expendable. If they ran, the soldiers behind them would order them to fight or kill them. The third rank of troops, the Triarii, were the reserve, and fought with long spears rather than the sword. They often did not fight in battles, because the first 2 ranks were enough, and when they did, they used phalanx tactics. I forgot where this is from, but I read an article where the most senior fighter was put in front and the second most senior fighter was put in the row in the back. It is the same idea, make sure others don't flee by having your most trusted men in the critical areas. The scene where Sansa meets the Tyrells is one of my favorites, but one question nags at me. Did the Tyrells really not know Joffrey was vicious and cruel? I understand that there are always secrets about the court, and the story of his dismembering a cat would be suppressed. But, Loras is Renly Baratheon's lover and Margaery his wife. How could Renly not be aware of his nephew's nature? He was on the small council and in King's Landing for years. I know GRM wants to make Varys, Baelish, and Tyrion super aware, but if the Starks can realize Joffrey is a shit in 5 seconds, so can others. So, I have the Tyrells ask about the Starks instead. We never get a real sense of how good Robb is at actual fighting. He is much more of a general than a hero. For Jon, he has to fight for his life many times. The Jory speech echoes the great quote by Hugo Val when he marches off to kill the Boltons. It is good writing when he answers a question, "Do you want to die, Val?" The best 3 lines start with "Let me bathe in Bolton blood before I die." The Tarly battle plan is simple, uncreative but effective. Tarly commits his knights and footmen into a wedge to break the line. He is confident that his superior numbers will carry the day. The actual quote is, "What have we become, when kings and high lords must dance the twittering of sparrows?" Randyll Tarly says this to Kevan Lannister right before he gets killed by Varys. It is unfortunately the last piece of GOT that was published by GRM. I am up in the air on the whole religious issues in the story. I thought it was interesting, showing the machinations around the church. On the show, Cersei blows up the September effectively ended everything and religion is never mentioned again. You wonder if GRM will just discard it so casually or whether in the books, the faith of the Seven has a more meaningful role to play. Personally, I think the idea of a vengeful Templar-like society is pretty neat, with the caveat that it would easily go out of control and focus on the Starks, Wargs, or the Dragons. This is the Battle of Cannae, Hannibal versus 2 consuls in Rome. Hannibal had 40,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry. His cavalry was superior and it was comprised of Numidians, present-day Algeria, Spanish and Gauls. The Romans had 6,400 cavalry, but the quality was poor, but 80,000 infantry. So in terms of infantry, the Romans had double the Carthaginians. The Roman strategy was based on previous battles where they lost but still broke Hannibal's center. They had succeeded twice in this. The Romans wanted to simplify the battle, they wanted to avoid the trickery of Trebia and Tracermen, where Hannibal used deception and terrain to win. So, the Romans did a brute force attack. It did not go very well. Echelon sounds like a modern term. But Polybius, a Greek historian who lived in ancient Rome, actually described the Carthaginian deployment in those terms. It is the V-shaped formation that a flock of geese or ducks fly in. The first known recorded usage is by the Thebans at the Battle of Leuctra, but it was also used by Alexander the Great. Lysa Arryn declares the Knights of the Vale to be bold and true before Tyrion's trial in the Eyrie. Forgetting that she is a crazy woman who nurses her 8-year-old, I always thought the words "as high as honor" to be a bit pompous. On the other hand, the Reach claims to be the heart of chivalry. It should be noted that neither the Eyrie or the Reach do well in the GOT, which says something about the value GRM places on bold knights. Or that their leaders are dolts. Plutarch writes that before Cannae, a Carthaginian officer named Gisgo wondered about the size of the Roman army. Hannibal says there is one thing, Gisgo, yet more astonishing, which you take no notice of. In all those great numbers before us, there is not one man called Gisgo. Hannibal, like many of the great generals and Robb Stark, knew how to motivate his men. When Jon tells Arya to rest and eat, he is not kidding. In the actual Battle of Cannae, the armies stayed in their locations for 2 days. Hannibal actually offered battle on the 2nd day, but the consul in charge refused. The Roman army was commanded by 2 consuls, who switched off for each day. Clearly it was not the best way to run an army. The heraldry of House Bolton is different in the book than the TV show. The book image, a red flayed man on pink with bloody drops in the background, is cool, but it is on a pink background. The show image is on black, which works better on a battlefield. In the TV show, the White Walkers are ice zombies, the undead with bones and muscles made from ice and snow. But I think the intent of GRM in the books is different. In an interview, GRM describes the others as the sea made of ice, so magical elves that are more than human and not just shambling creatures. On the TV show, there is an episode where Bran discovers the children of the forest created the Night King, as a way to protect themselves from man. But in the books, the Night King falls in love with a woman with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. Then he rules the Night Fort and makes sacrifices to the others. The book version is way cooler and implies the others are far more powerful, whereas TV makes it sound like some sort of bad karma, juju. I like the book version much more. Before I get accused of making Jon up with Gandalf-like powers, the water in the lake is magically getting colder. Cold lake, warm land, the wind goes from the lake to the shore. If the lake is warm, but the land is cold, you have a sea breeze. So in the story, the waves of the water make the wind blow. I am sure some scientists or meteorologists will say this is impossible, but this is magic. Now, why is this relevant? At Cannae, the wind did blow directly into the eyes of the Romans. The hot Libyco wind blew dust and grit from the south. Hannibal arranged his troops to face north, the Romans were fighting south. Clearly, and this is what amazes me, Hannibal took advantage of the wind more than the Romans even fighting on Roman land. There are many parts of Cannae, but the key to the battle is the behavior of the Roman legions. You can make a number of excuses. The consuls were inexperienced. This was the greatest army ever assembled. After 2 losses, they were eager to exact vengeance on Hannibal. But it goes to a basic point: breaking the enemy line is crucial in ancient war. The killing really starts when the line is broken and your cavalry hunts down the fleeing troops. Tarly thought Bolton turning coat would be a huge shock, and then the press of 30,000 men would overwhelm the north. When they saw the mixed infantry dropping back, every instinct is to press forward and kill the enemy. And that is the heart of Jon and Rob's plan. I looked up some historical info on trench digging. The British guidelines say it would take 450 men 6 hours to dig 275 yards of a trench 7 feet deep, 6 feet wide. Now of course, those Brits have better shovels and picks, but they are not as burly as the small Jon. 275 yards is 1/6th of a mile, so wider than the frontage the Mormonts are guarding. So what Jerry comes up with is called a cheval de frise, a medieval anti-cavalry defense. This remained in use until the American Civil War, when it was replaced by barbed wire. Even in WWI, Europeans used these for gaps in the barbed wire. The origin comes from the Frisians, who are mostly Dutch. They lacked horses, so when they fought the Spanish cavalry, they used these spiked wood or metal obstacles. I have emphasized how brutal this battle was. Some people might note that a lot of Lannisters died at River Run. The difference is that the battlefield at the God's Eye, like Cannae, is compact. The bodies are concentrated in one small area. And the actual descriptions of the carnage at Cannae are hideous. In retrospect, the Battle of Cannae sounds easy, just like the Battle of the God's Eye. And yes, a much more cautious approach would have blunted the Carthaginian trap. But the double envelopment, aka the pincer movement, is hard to pull off, particularly as Hannibal did against a larger force with better infantry. It was a complex plan that required substantial coordination on the soldiers, officers and overall leader. The Carthaginian cavalry at Cannae was incredibly disciplined. It made 3 charges, never lost cohesion, and drove off the enemy forces. This, Rob's role, was necessary to complete the entrapment. Second, Hannibal stood in the center behind the Gaulish and Iberian forces. He needed the trap to take a long time, and he needed an orderly retreat. In the story, this is replaced by the drummer boys coordinating the retreat and the pikes. Once the pikesmen turn with their spears, the northern formation holds. Lastly, if you could break out from the trap with a huge push, Hannibal's strategy fails. This is what Lord Tarly is trying to do in that final charge. Hannibal is not the only one to try this maneuver. He is not even the first to succeed at it. Herodotus believed the Greeks used it at the Battle of Marathon. Alexander the Great used it at the Battle of Hydaspes. Sun Tzu, in the 6th century BC, wrote about this but advised it against, thinking it would be better to leave the enemy an exit route. Then again, he wasn't facing 2-to-1 odds. Hannibal was one of the greatest generals in history, and Jon and Rob follow in those footsteps. Of course there is a bit more magic, the cold in the God's Eye, and some drama, traitor Roose Bolton, Tarly being a jerk, and Jory's death. Cannae was not enough to win the war. There is a difference between tactics and strategy, but it continues to fascinate generals. The best example of this would be Dwight Eisenhower's quote. Every ground commander seeks the battle of annihilation, so far as conditions permit. He tried to duplicate in modern war the classic example of Cannae. Chapter 27, A Game of Shadows. Chapter text. A Game of Shadows. Arya thanked the old gods that a gentle sea breeze, not a violent wind, blew from the lake. The medical tent, erected after the battle, hummed with activity. Small folk, soldiers, squires, villagers, and even fishermen pitched in to deal with the deluge of the wounded. The smell of honey, oil, wine and vinegar dominated the tent, masking the stink of blood and wounded flesh. Dressings of cotton and flax were soaked in warm water, wine or vinegar, ready to be applied after wounds were washed and cleaned. Fresh medical supplies and basins of heated water lay on a completely covered oak table, restocked as quickly as they were used. Many hours had passed since the Battle of the God's Eye, and a line of soldiers still waited patiently for treatment. This was not due to a lack of urgency or preparation. Before the battle, large stocks of herbs, salves and other concoctions were readied. When fighting ended, the Winter Town boys drove carts to carry the wounded on stretchers to the tent. Jon and Talia had done their best to treat the severely wounded first. Not all of them could be saved, but many were stabilized. Broken bones were set, and wounds were closed. Jon had extracted arrows and crossbow bolts, amputated limbs, and demonstrated the proper cleaning, stitching, and care of wounds, emphasizing that bandages were to be kept moist and changed regularly. Then, her brother left, either to mourn Jory's death or to take charge of the prisoners. Arya finished distributing food and drink, warmed hardtack and bone broth. They had no bowls, so the soup was served in scavenged helmets, cleaned by boiling water. The great Jon had drank 2 large helmets worth when a tray went flying through, scattering the slices of bread. Why are we healing these reachmen? We should kill them all. In his grief, Lord Ricard had not combed or washed his hair or armor. His grey beard and hair was unkempt, and the cast-dark sunburst on his chest was stained with blood. The battle is over, my lord, Talisa said, looking up from stitching a wound on a leg. The patient was a gangly squire whose well-fed face contrasted with the gaunt Ricard. They are our enemies. We save our enemies and do nothing for our own men. Ricard ranted. My lord, we have done everything we can. Jon Snow saw to your son Eddard. If all goes well, he will only lose 2 fingers. As for Harryon, Snow and I have both examined him. We must hope he wakes. We can do little now but wait. Talisa said. They butcher my son Torren, beat Harryon, and chop off Eddard's hand. And you want me to wait? He bellowed. He towered over the diminutive healer. Karstark. The great Jon pointed at the fearful squire. That one had nothing to do with it. He fell off his horse. The mountain attacked your 2 older sons. Whoever struck Eddard is long dead. And what do you care, Umber? Your son was digging ditches when my son fought. The great Jon's face purpled, matching the large bruise on his cheek from an enemy mace. Are you calling my son a coward? I thought Harryon was the only Karstark hit in the head. The 2 powerful northern lords circled each other. Ricard Karstark was tall, burly and fierce, but the great Jon's great sword was longer than Arya. They had not drawn their weapons yet. Daisy Mormont whipped out her menacing steel morning star. She had been visiting her injured soldiers while Lyra attended the dead. If you idiots want to brawl, do it outside. Daisy snapped. Karstark stormed off and the great Jon sat down sheepishly. Besides the soon-to-be extinct Boltons, no house had suffered the losses of the Mormonts. Talia smiled gratefully before returning to her work. Daisy, I am so sorry about. Arya said. The she-bear set the morning star down. I miss her too, sweeterling. But she died fighting and she caught her wolf, for a few nights at least. She saved my brother's life. Arya said. Bear Island is loyal to House Stark, and Jon Snow has Stark blood. And Jory was happy to stay at your brother's side. Snow vowed to return her bones to Mormont Keep. Daisy said. I know my sister, Arya. She would not want us to mourn her death, but drink, eat, sing and make merry. Death is hardest for the living. How was the battle on your side? Arya asked. Hard. There were many horsemen, guarding the flanks, and they are good fighters. We were stronger but we took losses. And then Clegane came. Daisy said. Jon thought the mountain would be with the Lannister men. Arya said. Clegane is a beast and a coward. He killed his own men and allies to escape. Snow told us that they hoped to kill him with pikesmen. A good plan, better than fighting hand to hand. I understand why Lord Ricard is angry. His sons had no chance against the mountain. Why do monsters live when good people die? Arya said. The war is not over. Clegane has escaped twice, at the Trident and at the God's Eye. His luck may still run out. Daisy said. Rob surveyed the men from both sides occupied by the grim task of locating fallen comrades. Headless trunks, severed limbs, and bloated bodies littered the battlefield. 5,000 men had died at the Field of Fire, burned by the 3 Targaryen dragons. 10,000 had fallen with Demon Blackfyr at the Redgrass Field. And now over 20,000 men lay dead at the Battle of the God's Eye. Some bodies were unrecognizable, crushed or buried without mercy as the northern trap constricted the life out of the enemy forces. Lord Stark. The speaker was Sir Garibald, a knight who had forsworn a minor house in the Crown Lands for the star crystals and the 7-colored cloak of the warrior's sons. He escorted 6 women in dull grey shrouds and culls, stained with dried blood, and a tired septon. My lord. The septon bowed nervously. The 7-pointed star says that the afterlife is a sweet surcease, where men and women can voyage to a far-off land to laugh and love and feast until the end of days in the Father's golden hall. We know there are 7 heavens and 7 hells, and that a godly man will get on with it. The Blackfish barked. Lord Stark, sinners who do not repent of their crimes go to hell. The Silent Sisters wish to cleanse the bodies, and prepare them for burial. Then the Septons, by offering prayers over the grave, will guide them to heaven. Sir Garibald said. If there are no prayers, they may be damned forever. The Septons squeaked. Let the Boltons go straight to hell. Roose will join them soon. The Great Yon chortled. The Great Yon might not have cared about the faith, but that was not true for the Rivermen, the Vale Knights, and the Mandaelis. How many Silent Sisters do you have? Rob said. 12, my lord, but there are mother houses nearby in the Crown Lands. We could triple our numbers in a few days, and call even more in a week's time, the Septon said. Rob shook his head. That is not enough. Even at 1,000 bodies a day, it would take over a fortnight. We do not have the time. John says that unburied bodies carry disease that will afflict the living. I will not have injured men die to honor those already dead. But I will allow a barrow to be raised over the battlefield. You may clean the bodies and collect the bones after they are burned. Say what prayers and bury them as you will. Thank you, my lord, the Septon said, and men and women of the faith left to tend to the dead. Bah, why do we care? Why aren't we marching to King's Landing? Lord Karstark yelled. Our men are tired. Our horses are tired. We have many injured. And we have prisoners. Rob said. The North had captured as many men as they killed. The Reachmen were stripped of armor and weapons but still required guards. The veins on Karstark's neck bulged as he continued his rant. I say we kill them all. We should have slaughtered them on the field. Kill the prisoners now and be done with these traitors. They surrendered in battle, my lord. I granted them mercy. Rob snapped. Mercy? What mercy did Tywin Lannister give your father? Or the Mountain give Torrhen? Karstark said. Our prisoners did not kill your son. Rob said. Then give me leave to hunt the Mountain. I will chase him to King's Landing and bring you back his head. Karstark said. No. We do not know the terrain from here to King's Landing. Some Tyrell forces escaped. And they will certainly post lookouts on the Gold Road and the King's Road. They may ambush your forces if you move south now. Rob said. You may know how to win a battle, Lord Stark, but you do not know how to win a war. Karstark stomped off, past the other northern lords. Karstark is just angry over his sons. The Great Yon said. I know, my lords. That is why I will overlook his remarks. Rob said. Then again, he was not certain he could punish Karstark. House Bolton was gone with its 2,000 men. The survivors from House Dustin and House Ryswell could be counted on 2 hands. As for House Mormont, half of their men died fighting. The rest were injured. Lord Stark, what do you plan next? The Blackfish said. Robb was not certain. He was not afraid of confronting the Tyrell army on the field. Attacking a city with tall walls, and then the Red Keep on Egon's High Hill was an entirely different matter. And inside the Red Keep, Jon said there was an even stronger fortress, Maegor's Holdfast. Horses and cavalry would matter little in such a fight. For now, it is more important that our wounded return to health. We will see what the Iron Throne does in answer. You will have to address the prisoners. We cannot guard so many for very long. Brynden said. Robb nodded. He would need to see his brother. They had to deal with Bolton permanently. Jon Snow left the tent with the most valuable prisoners. There was the Leech Lord, who refused to speak, a few dozen Reachmen who were happy to divulge any secrets, and Randil Tarly whose only words were yelling at his two sons to be quiet. He walked to the pewter waters of the God's Eye. The lake felt cool to the touch, and he could see stars reflected above. Something strange had happened here that afternoon, something inhuman and dangerous. The lake nearly froze, and there was cold worse than any summer storm in the north. Jon knew very little about magic, but he knew this. It was impossible for him to be able to perform any such sorcery. Seeing through the eyes of a wolf or a raven was one thing. But the God's Eye was the largest lake in the Seven Kingdoms. And the water had been warm and green in the morning. It was barely conceivable that a Rhoynar water wizard or a dragon lord, in the Age of Heroes, could freeze a lake. But he certainly could not. Something was under the waters here that stole all the warmth and color. He saw faces, death pale and bloodless. Warriors marching, blue eyes and pale white skin. They wore ornate armor and carried long crystal swords, that glowed faintly, like blue stars and moonlight. They vanished into white mist, and Jon wondered again what he saw. Was this the past? Or perhaps the future? Had they ruled the God's Eye thousands of years ago? These creatures had brought the cold, and they far surpassed any threat from the Tyrells or Lannisters. Jon. The voice of his brother broke his mind from the spell. He turned to see two direwolves with Robb, an energetic grey wind and a silent ghost. He stood and walked away from the lake. There were things that he could not explain to Robb, and that included strange creatures of ice and cold. Have the prisoners talked? Robb asked. The Reachmen have. The Tyrells still have men in the capital, 5 to 10,000 swords. Half the Lannister army fought here, and the other half is with Lord Tywine. And the throne has mercenaries, gold cloaks, and more guardsmen. Jon said. And what of Bolton? He refuses to answer our questions. I doubt he will break. He has nothing to lose and he will not tell us how he sent or received messages. Jon said. Whoever acted as his messenger may be dead. All the flayed men were killed on the field. Robb said. Perhaps, but he hid his bastard in another house. Bolton is cunning. There may be other spies for the Lannisters still in our army. Jon said. Did Tarly say anything? Robb said. That one also wants to be quiet. But his sons say a man delivered a message this morning. They did not see the face or a sigil. The plot seems to be between Tywine and Roose Bolton, and Tarly, as commander, was informed. Sir Baelor Hightower and the other Reach Lords claim no knowledge of the treachery. Jon said. Karstark wants to march for King's Landing. He desires the mountain's head. But I do not know if we have enough men. There are 3,000 men dead between the Boltons, Ryswells and Dustins. We have another 2,500 dead, and 3,000 injured, although many will recover thanks to you and Talisa. Robb said. So we really lost 3,500 men. But if our wounded die or are slow to heal, that could be another 1,000. Jon thought for a moment. They only had 10,000 healthy men. What is your goal? Do you want to destroy the Lannisters? To take King's Landing? Can we take King's Landing? Robb asked with surprise. Yes, but we would have to be ruthless. Tywine Lannister burned the Riverlands. Do you wish to do the same to the Crown Lands? Jon said. March south. How would you attack? Do you mean to follow Karstark in hunting Clegane? Robb said. Karstark is a fool. You don't chase a mad dog. You force it to come out into the open. There are 4 roads into King's Landing. The King's Road, the Rosby Road, the Gold Road and the Rose Road. The Tyrells and the Lannisters have failed against our army in the field, they will hide behind their walls. That means we can sack all the holdfasts and settlements nearby and deny them food. Burn the barley and wheat fields near Rosby and Stokeworth. Close the King's Road. Control the Blackwater Rush near the Gold Road. As for the Rose Road, the strength of the Reach is dead, captured, or at King's Landing. Highgarden will not resist us. John said. Starving a city will take a long time. Rob said. The long game wins. Lord Carstark would rather rush and storm the walls of King's Landing. Fighting with anger is foolish, and gets men killed. John said. You are angry at Jory's death. Rob said. I am more than angry. Jory should have never died. I should have fallen at the God's Eye, not her. I will mourn her later, but our enemies will pay for her death now. And the siege may not take as long as you believe. King's Landing has 500,000 people but only one source of clean water, the Blackwater Rush. John said. Poison the river. Is that even possible for the Blackwater? Rob asked in surprise. No need. During the reign of Jaehaerys the Wise, Septon Bath dug wells outside the city to tap the riverbed. They built pipes and tunnels that carry fresh water into the city, and cisterns that feed the fountains and squares of King's Landing. We destroy the pipes, empty the cisterns and bury the tunnels. Without water, the city will fall. So you mean to cut off food and water? Tens of thousands will die. And Sangza is in King's Landing. If the city has no food or water. Rob said. Sansa will not die of thirst or hunger. Neither will Tywin Lannister or Mace Tyrell. The soldiers will suffer before the highborn, and the small folk before the soldiers. Their army will be forced to leave the keep and walls and face us in the open. Their men will be tired, hungry and thirsty. They will die like flies. John said. I do not know if I can go down this road. It is dark and bloody. Thousands and thousands will die. And Sansa's life hangs in the balance. Rob said. And how do you plan to get Sansa back? John said pointedly. Victories are good, but winning at the God's Eye is not enough. The war ends when we raise King's Landing. The best way is not to attack the gates, but to choke the city into submission. Tywin Lannister raped, pillaged and reaved the Riverlands. The siege of King's Landing is but a shadow of that. But that was Tywin Lannister, not our father. Rob said. Not my father, John thought. My father died at the Trident. Robert Baratheon's war ended with the sack of King's Landing. There was no honor there. This war could also end that way. And the Iron Throne, or whoever sits on that chair, will not trouble the Starks again. When Arya emerged from the tent, the sun was already high in the sky. She had slept late last night, only leaving the medical tent when she was too exhausted to stay awake. Nymeria ambled over to her side, as tall and fierce as Grey Wind and Ghost. Arya's stomach growled. A large field kitchen was set up under a canopy near the lake. Arya breathed in deeply, smelling bread, fried bacon, and newly caught fish, roasted over a fire pit. The bread wasn't dry hardtack but rather freshly baked loaves. Soldiers and villagers unloaded ships, and sacks of potatoes, onions, and turnips were carried to the ovens. A shy village girl handed her a warm mug with tea and milk. Arya took bread off a large clay pot. It was delicious with a hint of fruit and reminded her of Hot Pie's cooking. It tastes better with soft butter. Hot Pie grinned, holding out a tray of dire wolf-shaped bread. Hot Pie. How did you get here? Arya asked her friend. Behind him, Gendry ate a biscuit stuffed with bacon. Nymeria sniffed at the tray, then turned her head and snorted. After the battle, they sent a raven to Harrenhal. We loaded supplies and waited for the ships to come to Harroway. I sailed last night, and landed at dawn. Hot Pie said. Hot Pie has something to say. Gendry said. He looked like he had strained his face, thinking. The fat boy looked sheepishly down at the ground. Ari, your brother John, he is a wizard. A what? Arya said. A wizard. A sorcerer. A master of the dark arts. Hot Pie looked around nervously. That's ridiculous. John is a maester, not a magician. Arya scoffed. Ari, that's what they say on the ships. The sailors and the captain. Hot Pie said. I spoke to the men who sailed on the lake. They have never seen anything like that. A huge storm blew on the lake. Waves 20 feet high. Air as cold as ice. Gendry said. So what? A bit of bad weather doesn't prove anything, she snapped. Arya, a devil wind blew in the battle. There was no wind in the morning. I asked the Mandaeally captain. No wind like that ever blows on a river or a lake. Even on the shivering seas, he has never seen a storm that bad. And the wind blew dust and dirt into the enemy. Your brother summoned the storm. Gendry said. Arya bit her lip. She remembered the sky turning the color of ash, Jon's cry for dust, and the Mormonts pounding their spears into the ground. She did not care what her brother had done. Jon had always defended her and she would never question his actions. Don't tell him I said nothing. Hot Pie said. I don't want to be sacrificed and eaten by a demon. Arya rolled her eyes. If my brother was a wizard, he would already know. And he would be plotting revenge against people spreading lies. Hot Pie looked about to piss his breeches. It is not a lie. Gendry said. The story will spread. People already whisper about him. Jon doesn't dabble in dark magic. He only means harm to enemies of the north. Arya said. Your brother frightens me. He frightens everyone. Gendry said to Hot Pie's vigorous nods. Good. They should be afraid. The Lannisters. The Tyrells. My brother is a wolf and he will kill anyone who threatens us. Arya snapped. They dragged Bolton by a rope. The Leech Lord crawled, crippled legs incapable of walking. The Reach Lords and Sir Adam Marbrand followed. Robb Stark sat on top of a raised platform, but all the eyes of the army were on Jon Snow. Large wooden stakes had been hammered into the dirt with the crossbar tall enough to hang a man. Heartspan rested on Jon's knees. He put the naked blade to the side when the prisoners squatted, hands bound, before the wooden dais. Roose Bolton was forced forward on bloody knees. The northern lords attended, and many of the rivermen and valleymen. Septons and small folk snooped from far away, and the soldiers in the camp, even the wounded, went silent. Any last words, Lord Bolton? Do you want to confess to your betrayal? Jon said. Why should I? I am going to die here. Unless you allow me to take the black, I have nothing to say. Bolton said. The wall is too good for you. Traitors to the north deserve death. Jon turned to Randil Tarly. Bring him up. Two boys escorted Tarly to the stage. The Lord of Hornhill stared at Jon, beady eyes in the hard face. If looks could kill, Jon might have cared about Tarly's enmity. Lord Tarly, will you confess to the treachery? And how you plotted with Bolton? Jon said. I am no traitor, Snow. If you cannot keep your lords loyal, that is your problem. Tywin Lannister told me that House Bolton bore no love for the wolves. Take up your complaints with the lions. Tarly said. We shall. But for you and your men, Lord Stark wants you to bend the knee. House Tarly will withdraw from any conflict from the north. You shall remain our prisoner. Your life is forfeit if any man from Hornhill joins the Tyrell army. When our conflict with the throne ends, we will consider your release. Jon said. Randil Tarly spat on the ground. And what will you do, bastard? I serve Highgarden, not the north. And Highgarden is loyal to the Iron Throne. We can kill you. Yield and House Tarly may live. Robb said. I lead Mace Tyrell's van before you and your bastard brother were born. Other people may care about such threats. I grew up as a soldier. I am not afraid to die with honor. Tarly said. Very well. You will not die, Tarly, but you will see your men die. We'll hang them all. But first, bring out your sons. Jon said. Two boys were dragged forward, one very fat, and the other quite young, and only a squire. Nail them to the stake. Vargo Hoat died quickly, but he was tortured first. Your sons may survive 4 days. The fat boy blubbered as the small Jon grabbed him by the neck. Daisy and her sister took the other one, and began to tie his arms to the cross. You would kill children? Tali shouted. Children who fight in war can die in war. Where is Horn Hill? John asked aloud. 100 miles south of High Garden. In the foothills of the Red Mountains, the older Tali boy answered. I will take our men down the Rose Road. We will raid your lands, and stack the skulls of your men higher than your lord's chair. They say you have a wife and daughters. Perhaps you will be alive when they die. I will burn Horn Hill, your castle, your lands, and your followers. I won't just end your line, I will erase any trace. John said. Chet handed him a hammer and half a dozen iron spikes. He examined the nails, picked 3, and walked over to the stakes. John placed the spike on the younger boy's right hand, and prepared his swing. Stop, stop! Tali cried. You win, bastard. You and your sons will remain our prisoners. You will write a letter to Horn Hill telling your remaining men to withdraw. This is what will happen if any Tali soldiers fight against the north. John slammed Tali's right arm down on the platform. Chet and another boy held down the arm. John drew Heartspan and with one strike, severed the right hand. Randil Tali screamed in shock as he saw the bloody hand flop on the grass. Chet rushed to get a brass tourniquet wrapped around the arm. You should have taken the first offer, John said. He turned to the other lords. Bend the knee now. I will not ask again. None of our prisoners will raise their arms against House Stark again. I do not care if that means they are dead, blind or crippled. If they do fight against the north, I will cut off your hands. Tell that to your wives and heirs. Tell that to your castellans and knights. We will send ravens to the Reach. The Tyrells will know that they stand alone. And you will spare our men if we bend the knee. Sir Baelor Hightower said. Perhaps. But I will kill them all if you do not. John said. As Sir Baelor and the others began to kneel, the other Winter Town boys piled up straw and wood near a stake. The now released Tali boys quickly dropped to their knees. Chet poured black tar pitch on the kindling. Not too much, John said. He dragged Bolton by the leash to the stake. He wrapped rope around the legs. The arms were still bound together, so he did not look like the Bolton sigil. I thought Starks beheaded their enemies, Bolton said. I am not a Stark, John said. He finished with the ropes, and spread out the straw and wood, so it was under Bolton's feet. Tywin Lannister will murder you, Snow. He will kill your dire wolves and skin them for a cloak. I am not the only one who will break faith with House Stark, he said. Who are the others? John asked. I will not tell you. One day, the knives will come for House Stark. The lions will hunt you down. You and all your kin. Bolton said. They can try. But your line ends today. John threw a torch and pitch-soaked kindling set on fire. Bolton's silent smirk turned into screams of agony, as he was roasted alive, and men covered their faces to avoid the smell of burnt flesh. It took a long time for Bolton to die. Margaery Tyrell missed the long walks in the groves, fountains and courtyards of High Garden. When she was younger, she imagined that the Red Keep would be like her ancestral home, rings of white stone filled with flowers and statues, stables for fine horses and fields of golden roses. She enjoyed exploring the Briar Labyrinth with her cousins, Megha, Alla and Eleanor. She ignored the tray of sweet corn fritters and cup of hippocras to look at the city through the stained glass of the Maiden Vault. Don't open the window, Olenna called. We don't need the smell of shit. Her grandmother was right. King's Landing reeked like a whore, and not a courtesan who was perfumed with lavender and rose water. What happened to old whores? Did they settle down with the small folk, and raise a parcel of brats? For every pot, there must be a lid. Have any ravens arrived from the Riverlands? Eleanor called. Her favorite cousin was betrothed to Alyn Ambrose, a squire for her brother Sir Garlan. Alyn swore to wear Eleanor's favor in battle versus the Northmen, and promised to marry when he received his knighthood. Garlan has not written, Lady Leonette said, fingering the goldenwood harp that her husband gave her for her name day. Perhaps he means to ride from the victory and surprise you. I hear that men enjoy a good bedding after a fight. Megha cried. Then my grandson would be the biggest idiot in the Reach. After battle, he should send a raven to let us know that he is alive and well. And the northern army is 200 miles from here. He would have to ride 4 days. Olenna said. A page rushed into the room, wearing a bright red apple. My lady, a message from Sir Stefan, the boy said. Sir Stefan was the Fossoe Castellan. 2 of his sons were fighting in the Riverlands. The ladies looked on curiously as Leonette opened the letter. Her good sister turned pale with shock and dropped the note on the table. What is the matter? Lady Ailary cried. Lord John was captured. Stefan was ordered to keep the men at arms home, else Sir Brian, Sir Edward, Sir Tanton, and Lord Fossoe will all be murdered. Leonette said. Margary took the note and read. The White Wolf vows to cut off their hands if any man of Cider Hall fights against House Stark again. He may even burn them alive. Burn people alive. Does this Snow think he is another Aes the Mad? Lady Olenna asked, pushing away the silver plate of soft white cheese. She reached for the note. Lomis, the old stoop-backed maester from Highgarden, hobbled in the room. In his hand, there were a dozen letters. Lady Olenna, the ravens arrived just now. They are all from the Reach. From which houses? Margary asked. Tarley, Hightower, Crane, Ashford, Merryweather, Oakert, and many others. Are there any from Highgarden? Olenna said. None, my lady. Lomis answered. Her grandmother took the letters in her thin spotted fingers. Her gaunt hands did not shake. Summon Loras and Mace. Olenna said. The Maester and the Fossoe page rushed to obey. Margary sat next to her, and broke the seals. The other ladies gave them space, waiting for any tidbits of news. The Queen of Thorns would have the first taste, then Margary, and finally the lesser Tyrells and other wives. Margary patted cousin Eleanor gently on the elbow. Every letter said the same. The captains of the Reach had been captured in battle. Longtable, Bitterbridge, New Barrel, Ashford, Old Oak, Honeyholt, Badelon, the Three Towers, the list of names went on and on. The principal vassals of House Tyrell had been rendered useless, hors de combat for any conflict in the Riverlands. Lady Melessa wrote the most complete note. She received 2 letters from the Riverlands, from her husband and her son, Samwell. Jon Snow chopped Randill's hand off, for insolence. And Sam adds that the bloody wolf burnt Roose Bolton on a stake. Olenna said. But House Bolton is pledged to House Stark. Leonette said. Not anymore. Olenna said. The warnings vary. Hands chopped off, eyes gouged out, burnt at the stake, crippled in both legs. Jon Snow is quite creative in threats to our bannermen. This Snow is a beast in human skin. Ailary declared. Is there any news of Sir Garlan? Eleanor said. Margary knew that the girl wanted any hint to her fate of Alyn Ambrose, her betrothed. If Garlan was captured, he would have sent a raven to Highgarden or to King's Landing. My brother may have escaped with his men and his squire Alyn. Margary said. Or he is dead. The wolves may have butchered Garlan and any Tyrell men they found. Olenna said brusquely. Oh, don't chide me, Ailary. False hope will not help anyone. Many lords have been captured, but I doubt the Starks do so out of kindness. This stinks of the Golden Tooth. He has forced the Reachmen to submit with vile threats and cruel deeds. How could Lord Tarley lose? He had greater numbers and the pride of the Reach. Ailary said. Mace was certain of victory. Today, he planned to take delivery of a chair as Hand of the King. I hope the craftsman made it large enough for his fat ass, and even fatter head. Olenna said. Perhaps. Eleanor said hesitantly. Perhaps, these letters are false. A clever plot to weaken our resolve. Snow is a sorcerer and a trickster. Could this be treachery somehow? The messages were sealed with their sigils. Lady Tarley and the others may have been sent false missives. But how would Snow know these names of the knights and lords? And why would he threaten to kill men who were not his prisoners? Olenna said. No, we must treat the ravens as real. If this is some twisted jape, the Tyrell army will still be standing. Loras rushed in, worry on his beautiful face. That concern only increased at the sight of his despondent good sister, Lady Leonette. Grandmother, sister, what has happened? Lord Tarley was beaten in the Riverlands. Thousands of men have been captured, including Sabela, John Fossoway, Randall Tarley, Owen Merriweather and many more. Olenna said. But, how is that possible? And what of my brother? Loras asked, half panicked. We don't know. And it is no use wasting time over things we do not know. Olenna said. Who do we trust the most at King's Landing? No one, grandmother. King's Landing is full of liars. Loras said. The Queen of Thorns gave Loras a withering stare. Who of our men do we trust? We have 10,000 at King's Landing. Surely, one of them can carry a message. Sir Gunthor Hightower. He is the third son of Lord Lytton, and wedded to John Fossoway's niece. He studied at the Citadel so he would know how to send a raven without the aid of a maester. Margaery said. Good. Loras, have Sir Gunthor ride south. When he is out of this shithole, send a raven to Willers with news of the battle in the Riverlands. He should then take a ship at Tumbleton and sail down the Mandaya to Highgarden. Then he can deliver the news in person and make certain Willers prepares the castle for any attack. Olenna said. Highgarden is 700 miles away. Surely the Starks will not attack. Loras said. Bitterbridge, Longtable, and Cider Hall lie between the Riverlands and Highgarden. And all three lords are captives. Do you think our bannermen will stop them on the Rose Road? I do not want my home sacked and pillaged by a horde of Northmen. Olenna said. Grandmother, we need to approach the Starks. We need to ransom the prisoners. Margaery said. We have duties to our bannermen. Margaery, you are not thinking of going north. They might capture you, and hold you for ransom, an alarmed Loras said. No, Loras, I did not mean myself. What about Owen Fossoway? He is friends with Snow. His father was captured. House Fossoway has many ties to our family. Margaery said. Yes, he would do well. Find Owen. Tell him we will offer a ransom for our men. As a friend to Snow, he would be treated well at their camp. He would make a good spy. Olenna said. But will he spy on the north or will he betray our plans to them? Loras said. What plans? We are sitting on our asses, doing nothing. Olenna said. Even if Owen is loyal to Snow, he will tell us of the size of their army, and the state of their prisoners. We know very little now. Better to hear a tale from Owen's eyes than rumors, falsehoods and travelers' tales. Margaery said. If these Northmen killed Garland, I will avenge my brother. Loras said. Don't be an idiot. We lost one army in the Riverlands. We don't need to lose another. Rushing to fight the Starks is a fool's game. Olenna said. And speaking of fools. Mace Tyrell waddled into the room, a jovial smile on his plump ruddy face. Hello, mother. What did I miss? He stuffed a lemon cake into his mouth. The feast was unworthy of a Lord of Dawn, particularly one just returned after so many years. The Martells had sent ravens but many bannermen did not come, despite the news of Lorca's capture. Starfall was almost 1,000 miles away, and the WYLS, Manwadis and Uranwoods were busy guarding the Prince's Pass and the Boneway. Any army that marched to the Reach or the Stormlands would have to pass the Red Mountains through these two routes. The new Lord of Starfall did not take offense, not even when a raven arrived, bearing his Aunt Illyria's regrets. Edric was a kind soul, without the martial spirit of his uncle, Arthur. In training, his old friend wielding the great sword Dawn could not be beaten. One day, Edric might be a knight but Oberyn doubted the boy would be the next sword of the morning. The older Fowler girl sat to the left of Lord Dane and the younger Fowler girl at his right. The Fowlers were several name days older, but the sisters were hawks, eager to swoop on any suitable man or boy, judging from the blush on Edric's face. None of the Sand Snakes, not even the younger ones, bothered with Edric. His girls scorned anyone who did not fight. They preferred to flirt with the foresters, and hear more tales about the wolves in battle. Elia and Obala even spoke to Sir Iman, and the Reachmen wore armor decorated with sunflowers. The Dornish bowed to the sun, not silly yellow flowers. Oberyn greeted his old squire, Demon Sand. Demon's grandmother, the Lady of God's Grace, whispered to Lord Harmoniula and his brother Sir Ulwick. The lords of House Gargallan and Dalt scowled at Mercilla Baratheon, but Sarilla spoke kindly to Tristan and his princess. His most sensible daughter recounted a few amusing tales of foolish maesters at the citadel. Serving men filled the cups of Dornish strong wine, dark and sweet, and ladled a delicate soup of eggs and lemons into bowls. Oberyn ate and drank very little. He was happy with simple food, flatbread, chickpeas, olives and white cheese. He did not want sweet pies of suckerfish and lampreys, capons glazed in honey and almond milk, or savory snake stew. Fighting and fucking pleased him far more than eating and drinking. A tall, fierce girl with blazing red hair approached his seat. Aereo Hotter stepped forward, the great long axe ready to guard Doran. Oberyn needed no protection. Valinor. Arianne said. His niece stood up to embrace her friend. The girl curtsied with a boldness fitting of the Dornish. Prince Doran, my mother, Lady Nymella could not come. But I brought someone who would see you. My lady, I am not certain this is wise. An old man with links on his collar said. Valinor quieted the maester with a glance. She gently led a girl forward. She was short, plump and shy with the red hair of the Tolans of Ghost Hill. This is my younger sister, Tira. My prince, her humors are unbalanced. She has too much bile from eating rich foods. She needs to purge herself of her excesses and stop with this nonsense, the maester said. The pudgy girl balled up her hands. I hate you, she declared. Sarilla approached. Archmaester Ibros believes the four humors are a load of codswallop. He has studied the heart and lungs to see how blood circulates around the body. Vile sorcery. The maester sneered. Does Ibros still rob graves? The Archmaester experiments on snakes, fish, and small animals. Sarilla said coldly. Tira looked up from her feet. I have seen things. Her pale face met the gaze of Oberyn, Doran and Arianne. She no longer looked like an inadequate child of a powerful family. I see them, fire-made flesh, flying high above the skies. What do you see? Oberyn asked. Dragons. Tira said. 3 dragons. The first is black and silver, pretty but held on strings and sticks. The second is silver and gold, born again in blood and fire. But it is the third dragon that is the greatest, black and red. Scarlet wings and blood-red eyes. A dragon whose breath can melt steel and stone, and fuse sand into glass. The last dragon was the last dragon. That is known. Alras said. Sailors tell stories that Daenerys Targaryen has birthed 3 dragons. Oberyn said. But we do not know the truth of it. And any dragons born to her would be young, easy to kill with a scorpion, catapult, or even a spear. I saw the dragons dance. All 3 of them. And everywhere the dragons danced, people died. Tira said. The dance happened when dragon riders fought each other in the air. Daenerys Targaryen may have 3 dragons, but they are far too small to ride. Doran said. We are House Martell. Even dragons must bow to the sun. Oberyn said. Tira shook her head. The last dragon will blot out the sun. Death comes in his wake. The pudgy girl began to cry and Valinor wrapped her arms about her sister and led her away. Oberyn was not the only one who saw the message slipped in Doran's hand during the feast. Ellaria, Arianne and the Sand Snakes did as well. Maester Miles might be an expert healer and a capable tutor, but he lacked any ability at deception. Oberyn was not surprised that his brother requested his presence that night. He did not expect Edric to attend, and with the shy boy, came Arianne and her cousins. Ellaria had at least forced his younger daughters to bed. Doran dismissed the young maester. A large raven sat on the golden wood table, peering at the Martell family with beady suspicious eyes. Doran patiently extended his hand and the bird gave up the message. Edric, this raven came for you this evening. Doran said. But my aunt already wrote that she could not come. Edric said. The sigil is not the sword and star of House Dane. It is a white wolf on grey. Doran handed the letter to the boy. Edric took the letter and broke the seal. Arianne inched closer and the Sand Snakes stared at the young Lord Dane. The boy was certainly taking his sweet time to read a short note. What does the letter say? Oberyn demanded, her hand on a whip. Edric looked up, a smile on his good-natured face. The Starks defeated the Reach at the God's Eye. John writes that they killed 15,000 and captured another 15,000, including Lord Tully, Lord Fossoway, Lord Merryweather, Sir Baelor Hightower, and many others. He asks when I will return north with the Dornish. But they are just young boys. How could they win so great a victory? A stunned Arianne said. Wolves are good at fighting. Roses are not. Sarilla said. With so many captured, the Reach is weak. And many of their strongest lords are prisoners or at King's Landing. Nymeria Sand asked. Father, we can attack now. Send Fowler men through the Prince's Pass and the Huron Woods over Boneway. We can teach the Reach and the Stormlands to fear our spears. Arianne said. We are not Ironborn raiders. Our feud is not with Highgarden or Storm's End. Doran said. And why not? The Reach stands behind the Iron Throne. The Tyrells have married their rose to the lions. And the Stormlanders killed our men in the rebellion. The time has come to get revenge for Dornish blood. Arianne said. Edric, what did Robb Stark and Jon Snow ask for? Doran said patiently. Dornish swords and spears to fight the Lannisters. Edric said. The Lannisters. Doran repeated. Not the Tyrells. Not Hornhill or Old Town. And if we march north over the Boneway, our men would pass 400 miles before King's Landing. The Stormlords are not likely to grant safe passage through their lands. Who cares about the Stormlanders? 2 stags are dead and the other is a kinslayer. The Stormlords will hide in their castles, just like you do. Arianne said. You will care, cousin, when they bleed our men. An enemy army in Dorne would get no peace. Why would it be different in any of the other kingdoms? Sarilla said. We have no alliance with the North. Before I send 10,000 men to die in the Riverlands, we must understand the Starks' plan. Will they attack King's Landing? Will they sack the Reach or the Crown Lands? Will they ally with Stannis Baratheon? Doran said. Our men will not die. They fight for the glory of Dorne. Oberyn said. They will fight and they will die. In war, men on both sides die, and there is little glory in skulls and bones. Doran said. By the time you understand these things, the war will be over. Either King's Landing will fall or the wolves will be beaten. Arianne said. We should send men north. But there may be another way that doesn't cost much Dornish blood. Sarilla said. The North may need spears and swords, but they also need information. If the Starks know the Lannister plans, Lord Tywine has no chance in an even battle. If the wolves could get enough men through the walls, no city will resist them. You want us to be spies, and open the city to another sack. That will not be easy. The Fat Flower and the Old Lion will not trust us. And the Spider will watch with his little birds. A raven cannot fly from Sunspear without our knowledge. It will be no different in King's Landing. Oberyn said. No one said it would be easy, father. You have waited 16 years for vengeance. Why not go to King's Landing and send a message to the Starks? If we betray Lord Tywine's location on the battlefield, Jon Snow will kill the Old Lion. Sarilla said. I would rather kill him myself. Oberyn said sourly. You will come with me to King's Landing. And Ellaria as well, but her children will stay behind in the Water Gardens. The Iron Throne promised Dorne a position on the small council. We will come too, father. Tyen said. Revenge, intrigue, and danger, we could hardly let Sarilla go alone. Oberyn and Nymeria nodded in agreement. You are not going. Doran said to a disappointed Arianne. Bad enough your cousins risk their lives in the snake pit. I will encamp a Dornish host at Huronwood, ready to cross into the Stormlands on my signal. And Edric, give a message to this Snow. If he can deliver Tywine Lannister and Gregor Clegane to Dorne, we would be most grateful. What of Tristan and his little lioness? Oberyn asked. Myrcella is not to be harmed. Even if the Iron Throne falls, House Martell will honor the betrothal. Doran said. She is a bastard of the Kingslayer and the Queen. If the Lannisters have no claim to the throne, what can she offer? A Dornishman will never rule Casterly Rock. Nymeria said. She is my ward. I will not see her harmed. Doran said. A ward is a hostage. If her family dies, a hostage is not needed. Nym said. We are not Lannisters. We do not kill little girls in Dorne. Oberyn said. She will not be little forever. Tyen said sweetly. Milady, milady. The serving girl cried as she ran. In her flight, the young village lass still carried a woven basket of clothes, freshly washed in the lake. Arya refrained from correcting the girl. Every small folk, boy or girl, man or matron, bowed and scraped before her, and called her milady. At Winterfell, she had been Arya underfoot, more interested in riding and exploring. But at the God's Eye, she was the White Wolf's heir. The Rivermen and the Vale Knights deferred to her, and the prisoners from the Reach gave her a wide berth. They were afraid. Milady Stark. The girl nearly fell as she curtsied. At least, she didn't kneel, Arya thought. Me and Shira saw riders, coming up from the lake, waving a white flag. A white flag meant a request for negotiation. How many? And what were they wearing? The girl held out 6 fingers. The one in front was in brown and red. The others wore mail, but carried no weapons. At least not that we could see. Thank you, Bandy. I will go see them. She stepped past chained men carrying water for the horses. They lowered their eyes and murmured. The Marndaily overseers nodded respectfully and other soldiers began to draw swords and spears as the strangers came into view. The leader was a broad-shouldered, brown-haired and square-faced man with a red apple on his plain doublet. He was older than her brothers, but not by much. He gave a short whistle and all 6 horses stopped. They dismounted, and Arya could see that the hilts of their swords were tied to the sheaths, making it difficult to draw. The 3 in the rear carried unstrung bows and arrows in the quiver were also tied together. Lady Stark. The brown-haired man bowed low. How do you know who I am? Arya asked suspiciously. Northern knights and Stark guards stood behind her. Nymeria bared her teeth in a silent growl. You have a dire wolf. Just as large as the 2 I saw at Riverrun. My name is Owen Fossoe. I was a friend of your brother at the Citadel, the man said. This isn't the Citadel, boy. A tall Northman yelled. Arya wasn't certain if it was Robert or Galbart Glover. But I am still Jon Snow's friend. Owen said. I am here to see your brother, Jon, and to ask about the Reachman that you captured. You hold my father, my cousins and many of my friends, he said. This could be a trick. Glover said. I will show you the way. Arya handed the Reachman a small bottle. Peppermint oil. You will need it for your nose. They walked west to the battleground. Several days later, traces of the battle littered the field: broken arrows, shivered spears, chipped swords, crushed armor and dried blood. Even with peppermint, Arya gagged from the overpowering and oppressive stench. Men worked hard to bury the dead. Deep trenches had been dug, and unknown bodies were placed there. Rows of graves had been constructed for the highborn, and Jon ordered a cemetery erected, with the names and houses be preserved for the honorable dead. It was difficult, back-breaking work, but the prisoners did not complain. They feared being burnt alive. The dead Boltons filled a nameless grave with Roost's blackened body on top. Lord Bolton's screams in death stunned the prisoners, and the Vale and Rivermen turned away from the burning. Robb defended their brother wholeheartedly. He had told the Septons that they could chant prayers and recite hymns, but no one would mourn the traitor Bolton. And no one did. Piles of dry straw, kindling, wood and pitch had been gathered on mounds of earth. Dozens of crude coffins were piled, and the Silent Sisters had washed and cleaned many bodies. She found Ghost and her brother standing over Jarell Mormont, lying in full plate mail, with shield and morning star over her chest. Jon knelt and placed the bassinet above Jory's head. Lord Snow. Owen said. Jon stood up. Owen Fossoe. I am surprised to see you. I came to ransom my father and any other Fossoes. Owen said. I am not surprised that you are here, but that you came so quickly. The Raven flew to Cider Hall 4 days ago. You could not have traveled from Cider Hall. Jon said. I didn't. Owen said. Then who ordered you to come? Sir Garland. John said. Sir Garland is alive then. I am glad. Owen said. John chuckled. It is a wonder you did not cross paths. Sir Garland fled the battle with the mountain. We do not know if they went south or east into the Crown lands. John, I ask for mercy for my family and countrymen. Owen said. What would the Reach have done if we lost? Lord Tarley does not seem like a merciful man. John gestured to the bodies of the Mormont soldiers. Many were placed on the central mound. His charge at the end of the battle cost many lives. You told me that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal. When you throw it at someone, you are the one who gets burned. Owen said. I would not be burnt. I would use a catapult. John said. If you wish mercy, tell the truth. You were sent, if not by Garland, then another Tyrell. But if you are honest, then I shall be fair. Arya. Find Rob. He will wish to hear. Arya sat down with Rob, and waited for Owen to speak. Freshly woven mats of sweet-smelling rushes were placed on the grass for the Starks and their guest. The Reachman finished a swig from a wineskin that John had offered. 3 days ago, the captain of the guards delivered a sealed letter to me at Tumblers Falls. It was signed by Mace Tyrell, but I am certain the message comes from Lady Olenna. The Tyrells want no further conflict with the North. They ask that prisoners be released. Highgarden and the Reach will pay a ransom. Owen said. Are the Tyrells going to break with the Lannisters? Arya said. I don't know. News of the battle has not reached Tumblers Fall. Owen said to her surprise. Arya, it takes several days to ride from here to King's Landing. The Tyrells only know because of the ravens we sent to the Reach. John said. Why should we help the Tyrells? Rob said. They are keeping Joffrey on the Iron Throne. Lady Margaery is still to be queen. The Tyrells will have a great deal of power in King's Landing. 2 of their bannermen are already on the small council. The North is not the only one who remembers. The Reach will not forget your victory or your mercy. Owen said. Her brothers looked at each other. A year ago at Winterfell, Rob had been just her big brother, quick with a smile and happy to spar in the yard. John had been her other big brother, a fond memory exiled to Old Town, whose letters never failed to bring cheer. All the softness was gone and they were hard and lean. Like wolves, Arya thought. She wanted to be a wolf too. I want my sister back. What can the Tyrells do to return her? Rob said. I do not speak for Highgarden, but I do not think the rest of the Tyrell forces will be eager for battle, Lord Stark. They certainly would trade Lady Sansa for peace. Perhaps. Owen said. John snorted. Actions matter, Owen. Not words. And these words are as empty as Lazy Leo's head. If the Northern army appeared before the gates of King's Landing, would the Tyrells surrender the city? Or would their men attack from the walls? I am a messenger, not a general. If I was Lord of Highgarden, we would be sipping wine and eating fire plums. I always hoped you could come to Cider Hall, marry a cousin, and stay in the Reach. I told the Tyrells they should offer you a bride. Owen said. A bride. Among the Fossoes. I will try not to kill any of my good brothers. John smiled. Owen, how close are the families of the Reach? Very close. My father married Mace Tyrell's sister, so Sir Garland and Lady Margaery are my cousins. And Lady Olenna was a red wine. Lord Lytton Hightower had 10 children, and most are married in the Reach. My sisters and brothers married into House Tyrell, Hightower, Crane, Oakert, Rowan, and Redwine. Owen said. You have large families. Rob said. It is the Reach, my lord. It is a very fertile land. Owen said. We will show mercy, but your lords will remain hostages. Rob said. Tell the Tyrells that the North demands the return of Sansa Stark. What are you offering for the other prisoners? John said. Gold for their return south. They will not fight against you again. Owen said. 20 dragons for every man at arms. 40 for squires and crossbowmen. And 60 for knights. John said. Owen gulped. A high price. How many Fossoes were captured? John shook his head. The price is for all of them. 15,000 men. 15,000. Owen squawked. We will not pay for the Westermen. We took only a few hundred Lannister prisoners in the battle. Most died when they charged the shield wall with Tully. Jon said. 15,000 prisoners, that is a great deal of gold. I am not certain how long it will take the Reach to raise such sum. Owen said. As you say, the Reach is a very fertile land. There is a price to be paid for helping our enemies. But your men will be safe. Jon said. And there will be no executions of our commanders. You will treat my father and our lords and knights fairly. Owen said. So long as the prisoners do not take up arms again. They will never fight the North. If they keep those vows, the highborn will not be harmed. Jon said. That is quite fair. Owen hesitated. Jon, what of their swords and horses? Many of the men are farmers, small folk or castle guards. With their mounts, they could return home more quickly. You want us to return your horses? Robb asked in surprise. They are not much use to us. Jon said. We are not Dothraki. We cannot feed 10,000 horses. The Reach promises that their men will ride south immediately without bloodshed. After this battle, I doubt that any prisoner wants to continue fighting. These men will go south to Tumbleton and take the Rose Road home. Owen said. Her brothers spoke quietly before coming to an agreement. Very well, Owen. The prisoners will return home with their horses. They can take back arms and armor but must swear to only fight for self-defense. We will give them a few days of rations for the trip home. But the Tyrells must swear to pay our ransom. Jon said. That is more than 500,000 dragons. Arya said. Thank you, Jon. Your terms are more than fair. The Tyrells will be glad, well except for the gold dragons. Owen said. Highgarden is rich and the Tyrells will collect the gold from Cider Hall, Old Town, Tumbleton, and many other bannermen. Jon smiled. You will have to sell more apples and cider. I will send ravens to Highgarden, Tumbleton and King's Landing. Owen said. When we receive the letter from Lady Olenna or Lord Mace, we will release your men. I will also speak to my lords and Jon to the prisoners. Robb said. Yes, but first we have to say goodbye to our dead. You may attend. Jon said. By sunset, news of the agreement with the Reach spread far and wide. Not the ransom, or Fossoe's role as a messenger, but people knew though that the prisoners might soon be released, and returned their horses and arms. A palpable sigh of relief went through the camp. No one wanted to see more men burnt alive. Arya stood with the Northmen, as Jon and Robb walked about the funeral pyres with torches. Owen sat with his father, and several Reach nobles. The Rivermen and the Vale Knights also attended. The kindling and pitch caught fire quickly, and the coffins of the hallowed dead burned brightly on the biers. There were tears of farewell and salutes to the courage of the fallen. No house was praised more than the Mormonts. The flames rose high, and the wind blew from the lake. The fires were cleansing, and the smell of death dissipated into the night air. I thought we were taking the bones back to the north. Arya said. We are. Daisy replied. Jory's bones will be collected into an urn. For the other Mormont soldiers, Snow will raise a barrow on top of a hill, overlooking the lake, for their bones to rest. My sister died, but her name will not be forgotten. When men wonder who won this battle, they will know that it was the She-Bears. I would rather Jory live than be remembered, but no one can outrun their fate. Lyra said. The stranger comes for us all. The flames finally died, and the army sat down for dinner. A rider came from the north, a burly knight on a brown destrier wearing the colors of House Tully. My lord, my lord. The knight breathed heavily, and as he took off the helmet to reveal a bald head, Arya could see the sweat pouring down his face. The old man looked as exhausted as his horse. Sir Robin, you left a week ago for Riverrun, the Blackfish said. Why have you returned? The Kingslayer is gone. Robin Roger gasped. What? How did he escape? Robb yelled. He did not escape. Lady Stark set him free, the knight answered before falling to his knees. Tyrion ignored the pounding on his door. It was not yet noon, which meant he was far too sober to deal with fools and idiots. Word of the massacre sent the entire city into a panic. Small folk streamed out of the gates, hoping to find shelter in the Kingswood, the vast primeval forest to the south. Crackpots and begging brothers gathered in the squares, wailing about how the North would butcher those who did not repent their sins. Tyrion doubted that Robb Stark or Jon Snow would give two shits about the rantings of septons. If he was about to die, he would do so with a whore and a bottle of wine. He guzzled down a flagon of Arbor Gold. "Is that the Northern Army at your door?" Bronn said, as he cleaned his nails with an ugly knife. "I hope so. Then they can end my suffering." Tyrion kept his tone light. The last thing he wanted was the sellsword to desert. Japes were one way to keep the fear away. Wine was another. Drinking allowed him to stay sane. He and Varys had kept their wits at the small council meeting held in the Red Keep last night. The same could not be said for a flummoxed Mace Tyrell and the other Reachman, his screaming sister, and a pathetic Pycelle. Baelish was away in the Vale, wooing Lysa in. "Open the door, imp!" Sir Meryn Trant loudly demanded. Tyrion sighed and nodded. Two white cloaks stepped forth, flanked by his cousin, Lancel. Cersei had once jested that Jaime was the stupidest Lannister. Clearly she had not remembered their younger cousin. Lancel flourished a scroll. "I bring orders from the king. He demands that Sansa Stark be handed over for punishment." "Where is the Stark girl?" Trant said, sword in hand. Both Trant and Sir Boros Blount wore a set of gleaming plate armor and a crested T-shaped helmet. "She is staying here," Bronn replied. In the blink of an eye, he drew a longsword and a dirk. The sellsword wore only black ringmail over leather, but he relied on speed over sheer force. "Call off your dog," Imp Trant said. "It is treason to attack a Kingsguard." Blount stepped to the side, in an obvious attempt to flank Bronn. "Not treason for me." Sandor Clegane's two-handed sword rested at the back of Blount's neck. A weaker man might be unable to push the tip through the mail coif hanging from the helmet. The Hound would have no such problems. Sansa Stark stood behind Clegane, wearing a purple dress and a grey hood that hid most of her thick auburn hair. "Clegane, these are orders from the king," Trant said. "Then he can come here himself," Clegane said. "The king ordered me to guard the girl so she comes to no harm. She won't be taken by three cocksuckers who can't swing a sword. King Joffrey will be greatly angered," Lancel managed to say. "Joffrey is always angry. Northmen get angry as well. I hear they burn men alive, and cut off the hands of their prisoners," Tyrion said. "King Joffrey will crush the traitors," Trant announced. "He certainly hasn't done a good job of it so far," Tyrion smirked. "No doubt when the Starks see you lead our men at the walls, they will quake in their boots." Lancel withdrew and the two white cloaks went with him. Bronn sat down and oiled his sword. The servants brought Sansa hot bread, butter and honey. A second plate was set out for Jane Poole, but the timid girl refused to venture to the great hall. Lady Sansa wrapped the food in a handkerchief. Clegane gobbled down bread and a hunk of cold chicken. "Lord Tyrion, is there any more news from the Riverlands?" the girl asked. "The men returned from the battle, but not many of them. The stories differ as to how many were butchered in battle versus taken prisoner," Tyrion said. He refrained from saying more. There was no need to spread the wilder tales of sorcery and torture. Others already had done that. The girl kept her face impassive, smooth as steel. She left, the Hound trailing in her wake. Bronn stood guard over her door. The sellsword had no intention of leaving the Stark girl. Tyrion entered the council chamber of Maegor's Holdfast. Bronn's spies informed him that his father had returned last night to King's Landing. He was surprised that Tywin waited until the afternoon to summon him. His father was not a patient man in the best of times. "Tyrion." Tywin sat behind a long table, with quill and parchment. Several letters were already written, waiting to be dispatched by messenger or raven. "Father." Tyrion set down the chain of linked golden hands on the wood. Tywin ignored him and continued to write. "Are you so pleased with my work that I am to remain the Hand? You can return to Casterly Rock while I rule the Seven Kingdoms." Tywine gave him a familiar glare. If I wanted a fool in motley, I would have summoned one. Well, perhaps Lancel would do. We do have other cousins and uncles, but the Starks enjoy their company too much to release them. Tyrion said. Varys has told me of the events of this morning. Lancel and Joffrey are both fools. His father handed over a letter written in a graceful, feminine hand. Tyrion read the words with shock, his mind reeling with the implications. Catelyn Stark has agreed to free Jaime. But why? I have promised through Baelish that Sansa Stark is not to be harmed. Tywine said. This letter was written before the Battle of the God's Eye. Tyrion realized. Yes, Lady Stark feared that her eldest son would fall in battle. She freed Jaime to ensure that her daughter would not suffer if the Northern Army was defeated. Tywine said. Tyrion almost felt sorry for Lady Catelyn. But then the foolish woman had nearly gotten him killed at the Eyrie. Where is Jaime now? That is of no importance to you. Just know that Jaime is returning to King's Landing. Now, we need to finish off the Starks. Tywine said. Finish off. They are winning. They slaughtered the army of the Reach. Tyrion said. Have you forgotten what I taught you? War is more than swords and spears. There is a tool for every task, and a task for every tool. Tywine said. He wondered whether his father had become ensnared by his own legend, the man who triumphed in the reigns of Castamere. The Starks were not the Rains. These tools seem to be failing. Everyone knows that Roose Bolton was your man. And now they realize traitors to the north are burnt at the stake. Bolton is not the only traitor in their army. Rivermen have never been loyal. Tywine said. Why not just return Lady Sansa and pay Wegild? The sword ice, Ned Stark's bones. If the Starks want to freeze in the north, let them. Tyrion said. The wolves have made a mockery of the Lannister name. Our own houses refuse to follow us in battle. And what if the Starks should claim the throne? Tywine said. Through a Baratheon bastard apprenticed in the Street of Steel. Who would follow him? The Stormlanders are a prickly lot. Stannis is too proud to marry his daughter to a smith with small folk blood. Tyrion said. Knights of the Vale fought for the north in the last battle. What if they are joined by their fathers and brothers? Royce and Redfort could declare for the Starks. And Jon Snow sent Amory Lorque to Dorne. The Martells will torture him into squealing. Tywine said. The murder of a Dornish princess and the royal children 16 years ago. Tyrion knew that terrible things were done for power, but the stain of those 3 deaths could not be washed from his father's hands. How do you expect to vanquish the Starks? They have won every battle, and if they should strike an alliance with Dorne or the Vale, we're fucked. With time and allies, Jon Snow and Robb Stark could take King's Landing. Tyrion said. Robb Stark and Jon Snow are better on the field, but there is more to war than fighting. We cannot defeat them in the open. We can attack from the shadows. A pack of wolves is hard to kill. But a lone wolf can be hunted down and skinned. Tywine said, finishing the third raven. Author's notes. I have talked about Roman medicine before, but it is extremely impressive. The third most senior commander of the legion was the Praefectus Catrorum, the camp prefect in charge of the medical service. The Medicus Primus was a trained physician who served 4 tours of duty. People who wanted to be trained as doctors could enlist, be trained, and serve for 25 years. Augustus, the first emperor, bestowed the status of knight on all doctors in the army. I have read some articles that claim only the modern world was concerned with the bodies of fallen soldiers, citing the efforts of the US military to retrieve fallen soldiers. But funeral rites were a big deal in the past. In the Iliad, the recovery of Hector's corpse is a big deal. Of course not all bodies could be recovered. But the notion of allowing enemy bodies to be buried after battle in accordance with religious practice isn't uncommon. In the Iliad, Patroclus is burned on a pyre, and his bones collected into a golden urn with 2 layers of fat. Hannibal did not march immediately on Rome, 250 miles away, after Cannae. One of his cavalry commanders, when told that Hannibal had decided against that, said, "You know how to conquer, Hannibal, but you do not know how to make use of your victory." We will never know, but most historians believe Hannibal was correct in his assessment. These are the same issues Rob is wrestling with. Tactical brilliance matters less in a siege. Rome, even after Cannae, had a huge wealth of manpower which Hannibal, far away from Carthage, could not match. He could recruit Gauls, but these are small numbers. Rome lost 50,000 and at Cannae. In a few months, they replaced that, showing how strong the Roman belief system was. I haven't broken down the numbers between the north and the river, but think about the last battle as a great but costly victory. Historians note that Hannibal lost 6,000 to 8,000 at Cannae while the Romans lost 50,000. Depending on how you count the Boltons, Rob loses 3,500 to 5,500. I suppose they could have killed Roose Bolton and kept their truths, but it is not clear how loyal the Bolton men would be. The Starks could have killed the entire Tyrell Lannister army except for a couple thousand that escape, they spared roughly half. Adjusting for Rob's mercy, the ratios are the same. The injury toll of 3,000 may sound high, but it really wasn't. Of course Cannae was probably more brutal than the battle I described. But there are records that Hannibal did not march on Rome because 10,000 of his men were injured. That is 20% of his force. Poisoning or denying water resources is certainly not considered noble, but has happened several times in the past. In 600 BC, Athens poisoned an aqueduct leading to Syra, a city under siege. Other reports claim Athens built a dam rather than use poisoned herbs. In 430 BC, Sparta poisons wells near Athens. Caesar sent his miners to wreck one spring and posted guarded on the other spring for Euchelodum during the Gallic Wars. The town soon surrenders. Saladin uses water as a weapon to defeat the Crusaders. He lured them away from springs and fill in wells. Before the Battle of Hattin, 1187, the Franks were despondent, tormented by thirst. Now one can argue how successful these efforts really are. My sense is that it is as psychological as it is practical. Randil Tali is referring to leading the vanguard at the Battle of Ashford during the rebellion. He says very similar words to Guyard Morrigan before the Battle of the Blackwater. Of course, Ned Stark also says something similar, that he would not trade his honor for a few more years of life. Then Varys threatens him with Sansa's life, and Ned Stark recants his statement. I always thought Ned should have demanded a trial by combat. He had a bum leg, but the best fighters were in the Riverlands. I personally do not understand why Daenerys burning Randall and Daikon was a big deal. They had betrayed their liege, Lady Olenna. She offered them the chance to bend the knee. Do we really think Cersei or Tywin or anybody wouldn't have executed them? So what, they died by fire? They were going to die anyway. Death by fire can be quick by asphyxiation. But if there is a wind, or the pile of wood is damp or small, death can take hours. When Mary I, a staunch Catholic, persecuted Protestants with burning at the stake, a priest begged for 45 minutes to be killed more quickly. A beast in human skin is how Robert Glover describes Ramsay Snow. The irony, of course, is labeling Jon in the same manner. I also like the contrast of Jon with his grandfather, Aerys. And a great moment of A Dance with Dragons was when Mace Tyrell, as Hand of a King, sat on a chair that was shaped like a hand. It is a hilarious image. The sack of Highgarden by Jaime Lannister was one of the main explanations of the Lannister comeback in Season 8. The argument is that with Tarly as traitor, the Tyrells had no idea. Well, Jaime Lannister has to march 600 plus miles from Casterly Rock to Highgarden. He would have to march 700 plus from King's Landing. Could an enemy army march that far without being detected by anyone loyal to the Tyrells? I get that Tarly was supposed to be this major commander, but what about the rest of the bannermen? Where were they? As for crossing that type of great distance, most medieval armies were incredibly slow. To give you a sense, it took Harold Godwinson 18 days to move his army 241 miles south to face William the Conqueror. People generally consider Harold's army march incredibly fast. Other historians comment that people were concerned about Harold's physical and mental state. Some sources though state that much of Harold's army didn't travel, and that he had to recruit new men. Either way, the point was that 240 miles in under 18 days was hard. The one great exception to this would be the Mongols. They traveled all on horse, and they had multiple horses per warrior. Mongol armies could travel up to 100 miles per day, which was blazingly fast. It is one of the keys to how the Mongols could easily beat forces that outnumbered them, because their speed would disrupt enemy plans. In feudalism, the lord has responsibilities to their vassals. I am not a huge Margari fan, but I think she would make a good queen. Hence, her sensibility in trying to find out a solution. The Tyrells could care less if Sansa is a captive. Sending her as a ransom to pay off the North would sound eminently sensible to them. England and France paid off the Vikings multiple times. I have read the Orianne chapter in The Winds of Winter, and everyone, including her older sister, is dismissive toward Tira's visions. Honestly, this is a dumb trope. Bran predicts the Ironborn will attack Winterfell, but Hojan says nobody will believe you. In a world where dragons are born, a red priestess can conjure shadows, and the dead walk, why don't people believe in magic? By this time, everyone knows Daenerys has dragons. And there are dragon's skulls in King's Landing. So in this story, Valinor brings Tira to see the Martells. In the Middle Ages, doctors believed that there were 4 humours: sanguine, blood; choleric, yellow bile; melancholic, black bile; and phlegmatic, phlegm. People believed this since Hippocrates in the 4th century BC. Melancholic is related to sadness and depression, which aligns closest to prophecies of doom. It took 2,000 years for the 4 humours to be challenged by William Harvey, an English physician who documented his discoveries in anatomy. It took 20 years for Harvey's theory on how blood circulated to be accepted. In the chapters on GRM's webpage, Tira says they were dancing in my dream. And everywhere the dragons danced, the people died. In the books, there is, fake, Aegon, who is about to take Storm's End. Presumably a more believable version of weakening Daenerys would be a clash between Aegon and Dany with their armies. For fans of military history, the surrender is based on the meeting at Appomattox courthouse. Grant had communicated with Lincoln, and the two agreed that generous terms be given so the country could start healing. Grant allowed the South to surrender with dignity, and the Southern men kept their horses, mules, and sidearms. Both generals told their men to go home and farm. When other generals heard, they accepted the terms rapidly. There were 1 or 2 small battles, far west, but in a month, the vast majority of the Confederate army surrendered without bloodshed. The South remained grateful to Grant for his kindness. Tywin's words mirror Ned Stark's advice to his kids. As Arya notes, it was the lone wolf that survived while the wolves of the pack were skinned. But then again, Arya did not know her brothers and sister, Jon, Bran and Sansa, were alive, but had been greatly changed. Chapter 28, The Sundering. Chapter text. The Sundering. The celebration for the dead had been long forgotten. News of the Kingslayer dominated the camp. Arya prayed to her gods that the old Tully Knight had lied, that her mother had not betrayed House Stark. She sought her brothers out, hiding her face under a grey wool cowl. The Kingslayer must have a golden cock. He sleeps with the Queen, and now Lady Stark opens her legs for him, a knight with a black pitchfork on a golden bar sinister sneered. "Shut your bloody mouth," Hagar Sawin man said. "Why should I? Why else would she free the Kingslayer?" the man replied. "He fucked her and she let him go. The Tullys have been fucked by the Lannisters before. Maybe they like it." "It's not true," Arya desperately hoped. They were telling lies. But the camp had turned angry and tense, and no one, not even the Tully men, raised their voice to defend her lady mother. The torches at the pavilion revealed dozens of armed guards, standing a respectful distance away from Robb's command tent. They were all Stark men, and they carried spears and wore steel mail shirts and caps. There were no smiles on their faces. She found a spot next to Daisy Mormont. Less than 10 northern lords had been allowed entrance, and even fewer rivermen. A grim Sir Brynden stopped a nervous Ed Muir from pacing. "How did Sir Jaime go free?" Robb asked Sir Robin Roger. "Lord Stark, we were travelling on the river road. Lady Catelyn wished to stay a night at the Inn of the Kneeling Man. Our men were happy for a hot meal and a warm bed. Her sworn sword guarded the Kingslayer that night. When we woke the next morning, the two were gone with horses. Lady Catelyn then told us that she released Sir Jaime," the bald knight said. "Madness, why would she do this?" Willis Mandaily asked. "For Lady Sansa. She says she was promised her daughter's safety." Roger said. Did you search for them? Rob said. Hollis Mollin and I sent riders west on the road. We looked for hours, my lord, but found no trace. After a day, I rode south to alert you. Hollis wanted to search for longer, but we had not found any trail. No one saw them on the river road. I would swear that. Roger said. The Inn of the Kneeling Man was 100 miles from Riverrun, near Stonehenge. It was an odd place to release a captive who would have to ride far to reach the Crown lands. Did Lady Stark receive a raven at the inn? John asked. The old knight stammered and hesitated. Answer the question, Sir Robin, did she receive a raven? Yes, a raven was waiting for her at the inn. We thought it was a message from Lord Stark. I just sent you off to Riverrun. Why would I send a raven to an inn when I am fighting a battle? Rob said. Did Lady Stark send a raven from the inn? John said. Sir Roger gulped and nodded. And you did not inquire about these messages? Rob said. My lord, it is not for us to question our lady. She is Lord Hoster's eldest child and Lord Stark's wife. Hollis says he has followed her orders for 15 years without question. Roger said. Arya doubted that Hollis Mollin would remain captain of the guards for House Stark any longer. I say we find the Kingslayer and take his head. Lord Karstark yelled. My lord, there was no trace of Sir Jaime. Our men searched for days. Roger said. You had 20 men. I have 2,000. Karstark said. I will find him, and send the Kingslayer back to Tywin in pieces. A son for a son. Blood for blood. Rob ignored the outburst. Where is my lady mother now? Hollis is bringing her here, my lord. He should arrive in a day. Roger said. Lord Karstark, you will wait until Lady Stark arrives. I wish to hear her reasons. Rob said. Ed Murtully looked like he wanted to speak, but a cold glare from Karstark stopped him. Rob dismissed the other lords. Arya would have left, but Ghost pressed his shaggy pale fur against her leg. She slipped into the corner and waited until only her brothers remained. How did you know about a raven? Rob said. If your mother intended to free Sir Jaime, she would have done so at Harroway or near the inn at the crossroads. It would be far easier to escape to the Crown lands from there. So, something changed her mind. A message or an offer from the Lannisters. John explained. Can you find Sir Jaime? Rob asked. How? John asked. I am not a warlock who drinks shade of the evening and mumbles about his powers. No blue lips. John, you do no magic. You proved that at the Whispering Wood, and at the Red Fork. And the wind at the God's Eye was unnatural. Rob said. There is magic and there is magic. Seeing through the eyes of Ghost or a raven is a small thing. But Jaime Lannister was released 5 days ago. He could be 100 miles in any direction. Even if I were at the Inn of the Kneeling Man, it would be hard to find him. John sighed. Fine, brother, I will try. I will send Ghost and ravens north, but without any hint of his plans, it will be hard. If you were the Kingslayer, how would you escape the Riverlands? Rob said. I wouldn't escape. Your lady mother sent a raven from the inn. That means whoever made the offer received an answer. Bolton says there are others that will break faith with House Stark. They may send men to rescue Sir Jaime, or give him shelter. John said. Rob looked at a map of the Riverlands. The Inn of the Kneeling Man is between Stonehenge and Raventree Hall. But the Brackens and the Blackwoods have fought bravely for us. It may not be them. But there are many, many Riverlords with holdfasts near the Trident. Tywin Lannister needs to only bribe one, and the Kingslayer could hide there, until he is rescued. He wouldn't do that. Arya insisted. Why not? Rob said. Brian is with him, Mother's sworn sword. She would insist that he go to King's Landing for Sansa's sake. Arya said. That assumes Brian is still alive. John said to his sister's shock. Arya, Jaime Lannister is one of the most skilled warriors in the Seven Kingdoms. Why wouldn't he just kill Brian and travel alone? I would. Why would Sir Jaime need her alive to return to King's Landing? But Brian is a great fighter. She is big and strong. Arya said. Better than the Kingslayer. He almost defeated all my guards at the Whispering Wood. He was beating both Daisy and Eddard when Jon captured him. Robb said. Even if Brian was skilled, she has to rest. She cannot kill him. But he can murder her in her sleep. He can use a rock or her sword. Jon said. Do you think Brian is dead? Arya said. Jon shrugged. I do not know. But it is possible, even likely. Lady Catelyn put her in grave danger. Brian will live only if the Kingslayer allows it. Tyrion Lannister enjoyed clever schemes, sharp wit and a clever tongue. But only when he understood their meaning. Sadly, he was not certain what game Varys was playing that morning. The eunuch appeared at breakfast, with colorful saffron robes smelling of lavender and lilac. His soft white hands clutched the Tiroshi Honeyfinger like a spider playing with a fly. I am sorry but Lady Sansa is indisposed. Tyrion said, finishing the savory kidney pie. Sandor Clegane barred the way to the Stark girl as did bronze sellswords. Pity. I merely want to make certain of her health. She is after all quite important to your house, and death can be so sudden in King's Landing. Varys giggled and smiled. Tyrion lifted a goblet of wine to give himself time to think. Had the spider discovered his father's promises to Lady Catelyn? And was that a threat to Sansa Stark? If the North thought the Stark girl died due to the Lannisters, all hell would break loose. Surely no one would wish Lady Sansa harm. She is only a girl. Tyrion said. We all know how much Lannisters care about the health of children. Your bannermen are famous for it. Sir Amory Lorke sang quite the tale at Sunspear until the Martells ripped his tongue out. The spider said sweetly. I had 10 name days at the sack of King's Landing, and I was 800 miles away at Casterly Rock. I do not know what happened at the Red Keep then. Tyrion said. You do not know because you do not care to ask. But Oberyn Martell does, and he was seen on Cape Wrath, riding for King's Landing. Varys said. Tyrion did not wish to deal with this. The Red Viper hated the Lannisters and had a fearsome reputation for violence and unpredictability. Still, Oberyn Martell, given the past, was known to abhor the killing of children. He hoped that would be shield enough for his niece. Varys, I know you like your little secrets. But I cannot spend the days eating honey fingers and kidney pies. Or even drinking arbor gold. As Hand of the King, many important tasks require my attention. Tyrion pushed the plate away to dismiss the eunuch. Ah yes, you are the Hand. Varys chucked into the folds of his robes. And I am a member of the small council. I serve you at your pleasure, my lord, just as you serve the king. I am afraid these meetings require the utmost of secrecy. Tyrion said. The spider looked puzzled although the tilt of his head and his eyebrow were exaggerated. Which meeting, my lord? The one with the black ears that you intend to send back to the Vale? Or the summoning of the most devout at the Great September of Baelor? Tyrion gritted his teeth. He expected Varys to learn about his appointments, but only after they occurred. You may accompany me to see the High Septon this morning. The eunuch nodded, the smile reaching his eyes this time. I'd rather not. He is a fat pig who grows ever fatter on lampreys while the poor starve. My little birds tell me I am unwelcome at the September and that the High Septon says that I am a heathen from Essos. Varys sighed. You are a heathen from Essos. Tyrion retorted. True. Better a heathen than a hypocrite. What do you want with the most devout? For them to spread the word that Snow is a sorcerer and an enemy of the faith. Tyrion said. Varys chuckled. The North follows the old gods. They will not care. But the Riverlords do not. And a proclamation from the most devout that Jon Snow commits blasphemy and dabbles in dark magic may drive men away from the Starks. Tyrion said. And back to the Lannisters. Only fools listen to the High Septon. But if you want him to bleat your song, you will need gold. He cares about blasphemy as much as you do. Varys said. The door opened and 2 giant men plowed forward, in green cloaks edged with gold and satin. The lady in between them was tiny and white-haired, but the rich clothes and the pendant of a golden rose announced her quite clearly. A dozen green-cloaked spearmen followed and several knights from the Reach. Lady Olenna, to see you again after so many years is a blessing. Varys simpered. Oh, shut up, Varys. The Queen of Thorns said. Sir Garland reached for his sword, and Tyrion realized the Tyrell men were heavily armed. We need to see Sansa Stark. The eunuch quirked his eyebrows. I have heard that she is indisposed. Olenna snorted and gazed at Tyrion. What do you need to speak to her about, he said. Business involving House Tyrell. Olenna said. I intend to keep the girl safe. I will not allow. Tyrion said. Olenna interrupted. Who will keep you safe, Lord Tyrion? By year's end, my granddaughter will be queen. My son will be hand of the king. Where will you be? Tyrion tapped his fingers together. As a Lannister, he had his father's protection, but Lady Olenna was not Catelyn Stark. She would not strike openly. And the Tyrells were wealthy enough to pursue him to Essos. Before he could decide, Sandor Clegane moved aside. A calm Sansa Stark walked out and curtsied to the Tyrells. Lady Olenna, I would be happy to speak, the girl said. Sansa Stark asked the servants for pears poached in wine and a cheese plate. She calmed herself by filling a cup of sweet plum wine for Lady Olenna and Sir Garland. Clegane hovered near and the hound glared at Olenna's twin 7-footers. Tyrion and the eunuch sat at the table, munching honey fingers. You know the results of the battle at the God's Eye, the tiny old woman said. Yes, my lady. I have heard stories from the servants. Sansa turned to Sir Garland. Sir, I am glad that my brothers did not take your head. I am glad too. I like my head and wish to keep it. The knight smiled ruefully. Olenna sighed, her years clearly showing. Your brothers captured many of our men. They intend to keep the very highborn as hostages but have demanded a ransom for the other reachmen. Snow has said he will kill them all if we do not pay. Sansa nodded. She was not surprised at those threats. The scullery maids at the Tower of the Hand gossiped about the capture of the Golden Tooth, of boys flung over walls, women starved for weeks and children dragged from septs. They wondered if the wolves would come to King's Landing and murder them in their sleep. Are these simply words? Or will House Stark massacre unarmed prisoners? Olenna said. Robb would not. But I have not seen Jon since he left for the Citadel. Sansa said. But what do you think? Will Robb Stark allow this outrage by his brother? Olenna said. Outrage. My father's men and servants were slaughtered by the Gold Cloaks. Septa Mordane's head was mounted on a spike on top of the Red Keep. The Lannisters did not allow Stark guards to be ransomed. Sansa said. That was a different Lannister. Tyrion said uncomfortably. And a very stupid one. It would be better to have hostages. Olenna said. Lady Sansa. Tell me the truth. Would your brothers kill prisoners? Butcher thousands of men after the battle? Perhaps. Jon has the North in him. Sansa said. What does that mean? Tyrion asked. My father says the North is hard and cold, and has no mercy. So yes, I believe Jon would kill your men. Why feed captives when they can be turned into gold? Sansa said. He sounds like a delight. Didn't Snow hang you from a gibbet? Varys snicked at Tyrion. The wolves set me free in exchange for Ned Stark and his daughters. Tyrion said. My father is dead, and I am a prisoner here. I hope Jon finds you again, Lord Tyrion. I hope you learn how the North treats oathbreakers. Sansa said. He dreamt of dragons, not wolves. Ghost had run north to the river road and the ravens had flown last night to the Trident, but in his sleep, he only saw dragons. Aegon the Conqueror, Maegor the Cruel, Jaehaerys the Wise. He saw all the Aegons, the first of his name, the greedy one, the sad one, the whoremonger, and the unlikely. The Maesters claimed the Targaryens danced too close to the edge of madness. Perhaps they did. What did it mean for him? He saw his father, Rhaegar Targaryen. Long silver blonde hair, deep purple eyes, a red half-cloak over night black plate armor, the last dragon. Jon wondered, had Rhaegar triumphed at the Ruby Ford, how would his life have turned out? Would he have been embraced as a Targaryen prince or shunned as his father's shame? Rhaegar had loved his mother, he was sure of that. But that love had been a sad story. Was I worth it, father? Your death at the Ruby Ford, my mother's death in Dawn, a bloody war, the murders of my brother and sister, and the end of a dynasty. Was I worth it? John wondered as he gazed upon his father and the kings of his house, stretching back for 300 years. You're a dragon, the shades whispered. And nothing matters more than the birth of a dragon. But that wasn't true, John thought. There were Targaryens that had not mattered, babes who died within a few years, girls married off for alliances, even kings who had done little or died too quickly. There were princes who drank themselves to death and princesses who led lives of quiet misery. Only a few Targaryens had benefited the realm. John saw a vision of a castle on the foothills of reddish-streaked mountains. A towering fire had broken out, an inferno that consumed the pleasure palace of Summerhall. This is what happens when you attempt to birth dragons, he thought. His father had been born here, amidst fire and grief. Aegon the Unlikely had died there, with his son and his friend, the two Duncans. They had failed, but what if they succeeded? What if the eggs hatched? John cleared his mind. He had no egg and no way to acquire a dragon. He had an army of Northmen over 1,000 miles away from home. Too far to get reinforcements, and eager to return home after 6 moons. As for the Riverlords, their lands had been pillaged and burnt. They might desire revenge, but they also needed to rebuild their holdfasts. He came upon Arya perched on a high rock, with Nymeria hovering like a protective den mother. The dark grey she-wolf was a head taller than her mistress and looked nearly as somber. Arya looking to the north, searching for her mother's horse. "Do you think they will punish her?" she said, biting her lip. "They. Robb is the one your mother betrayed. And Robb will be the one that has to render judgment," John said. "But, she was doing it for Sansa," Arya said. "What would Ned Stark have done, if a bannerman freed the Kingslayer?" John said. Arya wrapped her arms about Nymeria's neck. She took great comfort in her direwolf just as John did with Ghost. "Taken his head." Her voice was slightly muffled in the grey fur. But she must have had her reasons. Nymeria accepted John's touch with no complaint as he patted his sister's arm. "Everyone has reasons. That does not mean they are right." There was nothing more he could say. That afternoon, as the sun hung low in the cloudy sky over the cold steel of the God's Eye, a shamed Horlis Mollin led Catelyn Stark into the main tent. Bystanders gawked and whispered as the lady walked forward, a direwolf pin on her heavy grey cloak. Her brother Edmure hastened to Catelyn's side, but the Blackfish stayed back. Only a single representative from each of the great houses of the north were allowed, along with Arya and John. "Lady Stark, did you release Sir Jaime Lannister?" Robb asked. He had put on the solemn stone face, but he lacked the hard cold eyes of his father. "Yes, Lord Stark. At the Inn of the Kneeling Man," Catelyn said. "Why?" Robb demanded, his voice cutting through the silence of the tent. "They made promises about," she said. "Promises? More like lies. What are the words of Southron Cuntsworth?" Karstark yelled. "Be quiet, Lord Karstark. My lady mother is speaking." "What promises?" Robb said. "Assurances for Sansa's safety. That no matter the outcome of the battle, she would not be harmed or mistreated. I feared for her life in King's Landing, that she might be beaten, tortured or abused." Catelyn said. "Who made the promises?" John asked. "There were 3. Petyr Baelish vowed that he would protect Sansa and plead for her well-being to the Iron Throne. Sir Jaime Lannister swore on his honor as a knight that he would see Sansa returned safe and unharmed. He would compel his brother and father to honor that pledge." "And Lord Tywine?" Catelyn said. "That was the Raven at the inn," John said. "Yes. Lord Tywine promised on the honor of House Lannister that Sansa would not be harmed if Jaime was freed." Baelish claimed that Lord Tywine had sent ravens before to the inn, she said. That last promise sealed Sir Jaime's release. Lady Stark believed that Tywine would keep his word, despite House Lannister's history of treachery. A whoremonger, an oathbreaker, and Tywine Lannister. How can you trust any of them? Ricard yelled in a red fury. Baelish has already lied to us. Jaime Lannister killed the king he swore to protect. And father would have never trusted Lord Tywine, not after the sack. Robb said. Tywine Lannister may be ruthless, but he will honor his promise. He cares greatly about the Lannister name. He will not break his vow. Catelyn said. My lords, my son Bran was crippled by the Lannisters. I do not wish to lose my oldest daughter. Rickard Karstark's face turned from an angry red to a grim cold stare. That was far more worrisome than yelling. I had 3 sons. One is dead. Another lost a hand. And the last, my heir, has not woken up for 6 days. What about my sons? While you plotted with the enemy, my sons fought the mountain. Lady Stark faced him calmly. I grieve for your loss, Lord Rickard. But the Kingslayer's death would not bring back your children. His living may buy safety for Sansa. The Lannisters have played you for a fool. And you are a traitor, to the north, and to House Stark. My Torrhen deserved better. I want vengeance against the lions. If I cannot have the mountain's head, I will return the Kingslayer to his lord father in 2 pieces. Rickard said. The Kingslayer serves better as a captive. We do not want him dead. As our prisoner, his life protected Sansa, not the words of Baelish or Lord Tywine. Robb said. She was still beaten bloody in front of the court. And trapped at the Tower of the Hand for the past moon. Who knows what Tyrion Lannister has done? He may want revenge against the Starks and hurt Sansa. Catelyn said. Revenge against her, Jon thought. It was Catelyn Stark who kidnapped Tyrion in a reckless flight of fancy. She made it worse by losing him at the Eyrie. Had she brought him to King's Landing when Robert Baratheon was alive, a trial would have stopped this entire war. Lord Karstark stood up and directed an icy narrow voice to Robb. My lord, what will you do? Your mother conspired with our enemies. The Great Jon crossed his huge arms together and stood in front of Lady Stark. Leave off, Karstark. It was a mother's folly. A woman looking to protect a babe. Folly. I name it treason. My Torrhen is dead. While he fell in battle, the Kingslayer scurried back to King's Landing thanks to Lady Stark. I demand justice for my sons. Karstark said. He stormed off, pushing through the Great Jon and Willy's Mondaily. Perhaps we can capture the Kingslayer before it is too late. Daisy said. We do not know where he is. He could be anywhere. Jon said. Robb held his hand up. My lords, I must speak to my lady mother, alone. Edmure hesitated, but the Blackfish pulled him away. Soon, the tent only held the Starks and Jon Snow. Robb Stark placed both hands over his face. Only his thick red-brown hair could be seen, the vestiges of his Tully blood. Jon stood at his right side, waiting for his brother to speak. Arya stayed quiet as well, refusing to meet her mother's eyes. Robb, I am sorry. Lady Catelyn started. You betrayed me. Why? Robb said in a flat voice. For Sansa. I could not bear it if she was hurt. Catelyn said. I know he was a valued prisoner, but Lord Tywine has promised Sansa's protection in return. His loss will cost us dearly. But it is more than the Kingslayer. Robb paced restlessly, his hands clasped together. Why did you not trust me? Why did you not believe in me? But I do. The men respect you. You will be a good warden of the North, she said. If you believed in me, the Kingslayer would be delivered to Riverrun. You thought I would lose the battle. You thought I would fail, mother. That is why you freed him. Robb said. I saw the Tyrell army with you at Bitterbridge. They had 50,000 swords. Thousands and thousands of knights. And there were Lannister reinforcements as well. Catelyn said. At Harrenhal, I told you that Jon and I have a strategy to defeat them. Why did you not believe me? I have won all my battles. I have not been beaten on the field, Robb cried. They had so many more men. And Lord Tully is a great soldier. I feared that Sansa would be killed or worse. If you died, the Lannisters would have her at their mercy. Catelyn said. They still do. Sir Jaime Lannister may have sworn to return her, but Baelish and Tywine did not. Tywine only said that she should be safe, not freed. Jon said. Jaime Lannister swore to compel his brother and father to release her. Catelyn said. He is commander of the Kingsguard. What power does he have over his father? Jon replied. We all know who rules House Lannister. Tywin Lannister is our true enemy. Joffrey may have chopped off my father's head, but he would not dare to commit such an offense without Lannister swords and gold. You have humiliated me in front of my men. How can I lead an army when I cannot control my own mother? Who will trust me to lead them in battle? Robb said. It cannot be so bad. You won against Lord Tully. You have 100 highborn prisoners at Riverrun and captured many lords of the Reach. Tywin Lannister does not give a shit about the other prisoners. If they die, what does it matter? Jaime Lannister is his oldest son. He had more value than all the other prisoners combined. You know that. So does everyone else. Robb said. I am sorry, Robb, but I did this for my love of Sansa. I am a Tully of Riverrun, and our words are family, duty, honor. I would sacrifice my duty and honor for my family. Catelyn said. Robb turned his back on his mother. You did not sacrifice your honor and duty. You sacrificed mine. How can I command an army when I cannot control my own mother? Lord Karstark is right to be angry. He lost a son while Tywin Lannister gained his back. I did not know about the Karstarks. You cannot blame me for that. Catelyn cried. Men die in battle. If it wasn't Torrhen, it might have been the Smalljan or a Marndaeli brother. My father said that our bannermen are loyal to House Stark because we fight for them. How can we do so when we help our enemies? Robb said. Robb, I. Catelyn said. Robb raised his hand. Leave me, mother. You have done enough. They watched in silence as a wretched Lady Stark exited the tent. I thought the battles would be the hard part. I did not think I would have to worry about my own mother. Robb said bitterly. Karstark is furious. And I have no answer for him. He held his head in his hands, and continued to pace. You found no trace of the Kingslayer? None. The river is 150 miles away. Sir Jaime may have taken the river road. He might be on a boat on the Red Fork. He may be hidden in a castle of a traitor. In 5 days, he could cover a great deal of distance. He may even have left the Riverlands. Jon said. Robb shook his head. What can we do about the Kingslayer, Jon? How can we recover from this folly and make amends with Karstark? He lost a son. You will not make amends unless he has spilled Lannister blood. Jon replied. You don't mean to allow him to kill our captives? Robb said, surprised. Jon shook his head. The other captives hardly matter. He wants the Kingslayer or the mountain. Sir Jaime has been gone 5 days. That is enough time to flee the Riverlands, but not enough to get to King's Landing. We do not have much time. I say attack now with all our forces. Burn Stokeworth and Rosby to the ground. Cut off Duskendale. Prepare to besiege King's Landing. Forget Jaime Lannister. Bring the war to the Crown Lands. We do not have the men to take King's Landing, not quickly. And we don't have the Kingslayer. If we starve the city, they may kill Sansa. Robb said. But what about the promises to protect her? Arya asked. Would you trust Tywin Lannister? The man who sacked King's Landing and ordered the rape and pillage of the Riverlands. The man who employs monsters like Clegane and Hoat. He may not know if the Kingslayer is safe. And even if he did, when has honor ever meant anything to the Lannisters? Robb said. I grant you that there is risk, and that our injured are not ready. But the time is now, before the Kingslayer returns to King's Landing. Nothing is certain in war. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood, can lead to victory. We need to remain on the attack. We need to press Tywin Lannister in the open, and not in the shadows. Jon said. We do not have enough men, Jon. Combined, the Lannisters, Tyrells and the city guards will be more than 20,000. And they are fighting behind walls. This is not Oxcross. They will see us coming and be able to prepare. Robb said. It would be better to have more soldiers, and if our injured could recover. But the only thing that matters is to fight at the right place and the right time. The right place is King's Landing, so we can force Tywine into the field. The right time is now. Jon said. And Karstark. Robb said. Punish Lady Stark harshly. After that, send the Karstarks into the Crown Lands to hunt the mountain. Better he kill our enemies than lurch about the Riverlands. Jon said. She is my mother, Jon. I cannot punish her severely. I can send her back to Winterfell or keep her locked away at Riverrun. She is my blood. Robb said. Robb, you are not a Tully. You are a Stark. You were raised to rule the North. We have to defeat the Lannisters. We lose, we die, and so does the North. Jon said. I cannot risk Sansa's life, and what sentence can I give my mother? I will not send her to the Silent Sisters. Robb said. Why not? Lady Catelyn does not need to swear a vow of silence, but she should be banished from your side. If we win the war, welcome her back. Karstark will not care if we win and the mountain is slain. Jon said. You don't understand, Jon. You don't have a mother. If you did, you would not send her away to a September. I will not shame her. Robb said. An icy silence fell over the tent as her brothers glared at each other. You are right, Lord Stark. I don't have a mother. Jon turned and walked away. Arya did not know who was in the right. She could not blame Robb for protecting their mother, but Jon's advice seemed right. Her mother had made a serious error. And the North would remember how the Kingslayer had been freed, and who had freed him. The birds sang sweetly and the muddy red river flowed beneath the boat as the triangular sails picked up a strong east wind, blowing them into sight of the pink stone walls of the harbour. Lannister gold had paid for the impassive captain who managed the sails and tillers of the small cog. The old seaman was quiet, speaking to the two passengers only on the few occasions that he needed a second or third hand for reefings, shifting the ballast and tacking. He does not wish to know our names, Jaime Lannister realized. Profit mattered more to Braavosi than stories. Jaime laughed out loud as the sun tickled the grey whiskers on his face. He had kept his full scraggly beard grown over the last 4 moons but hacked his long golden locks short. With the homespun brown cowl and robe, he could pass for a begging brother. That could not be said for his companion, well over 6 feet tall with broader shoulders than the Clegane brothers. She insisted on wearing dented plate mail on board, despite the captain's sour looks. You have to keep out of sight. Brian hissed. The deep blue cobalt of the armor peeked out of the drab brown cloak, and a quartered sun and moon was displayed on the pauldrons. No one will notice me, wench. Jaime said. They will stare at you. Brian blushed. Knights wear armor. The Riverlands may be peaceful but fighting men are still needed. You are not a man, wench. And we are nearly out of the Riverlands. The walled town of Maidenpool could be seen to the south. They had crossed the Quiet Isle hours ago, and the red water of the Trident had been replaced by blue. Tyrion would know where the Bay of Crabs began and the Trident ended. Jaime barely cared. He only wanted to return to King's Landing. You will have to hide below deck. Brian said. The cog pulled closer to the harbour and Jaime could see the great stone bathhouse where good Queen Alysanne had almost died. He began to sing Six Maids in a Pool, a ditty about Jonquil and her sisters bathing while Florian the Fool watched. What are you doing? We don't want any attention, she said. Rather late for that. Jaime said. Armed men wearing a red fish on white waited at the docks. They carried spears and wore helms with fish crests. But these were not Tully guards wearing trouts. A pale whiskered man stepped forth. He looked soft and tired, and his fancy ornate armor could not hide a fleshy flabby body. Brian drew her sword, attempting to block any entry on the gangplank. Jaime snorted, and flipped down his cowl. The wench might be strong and skilled with the sword, but she knew little about the world. There were at least 8 guards, and no way for the ship to escape. Sir Jaime Lannister, the fleshy man with the red salmon sigil asked. Jaime nodded. I am Lord William Mouton. Welcome to Maidenpool. He sat on a gilded chair, overlooking the town walls, and the rutted road that led to Duskendale. The Raven said that men from Hollard Castle would arrive in a day's time to escort him south. Jamie drank the broth of the thick mutton soup, avoiding the onions and the beets. The food had been brought by only a lone guardsman, and those Jamie judged as the oldest of the ones at the docks. Clearly, Lord Mouton wanted no servants to learn his identity. "Go back to Riverrun, wench. I will not need you on the road to King's Landing," Jamie said. "I swore to return Lady Sansa to her mother, no matter what the danger. I made a sacred vow and I will keep it." Brian looked warily around the room, full of gilded wood, rich red velvet, and fine woven tapestries. A bright blue Tiroshi tricorn hat rested on a pale gold pillow near the window. Lord Mouton's solo was more garish than a whorehouse. "There is no danger. Mouton wants us to leave. So does my father," Jamie said flippantly. "We should go bathe in Jonquil's pool. I will wash your back if you wash mine." Brian glared at him with disgust. "I don't understand. Why is Lord Mouton helping you escape? The Starks freed Maidenpool. They saved House Mouton from your father's forces. So why would Lord Mouton help the Lannisters? Simple. He is a coward. Why are you helping me escape?" Jamie said. "I am pledged to Lady Stark," Brian said. "Lady Stark betrayed her son for the same reason that Lord Mouton does. Fear. Mouton has a girl of 13 named days, 2 boys who are squires, and some younger babes. He hides them from us, but I saw their faces in the windows," Jamie said. "So?" Brian asked. "What do you think my father will do to them?" Jamie waited a moment. "If Mouton betrayed me, his daughters would be raped and his sons tortured. Maidenpool is not far from King's Landing on the Duskendale Road. He might give the girls to Gregor Clegane. As for the boys, they would be lucky to die quickly. Mouton knows that his house can end in a flash. But, the Starks are winning the war," Brian said. "The Starks have honor. They would not rape young girls. My father does not have such limits. Why do you think he uses the mountain? Sir Gregor has married 3 times. All the girls died within 6 months. What do you think the mountain does to them before they die? He smashed a baby's head against the wall and raped his mother with Aegon's blood still on his hands. Lord Mouton has bent the knee. After the war, a Lannister will sit on the Iron Throne. My father will be Hand. My sister will be Queen Regent. And the Starks will be 1,000 miles away. How can your father allow such a thing? Knights and lords are sworn to protect the weak," Brian said. "You are a greater fool than Lady Stark if you believe that. My father cares about one thing, the Lannister name. Not his bannermen, not his children, he wants our family name to be feared and respected. And if raping girls and killing children will do it, then so be it. He would put Maidenpool to the torch, just like the Riverlands. My father is a butcher. Robb Stark is not. He does not have the stomach for it," Jamie said. "Better to be Lord Robb than your father, then," Brian said. "You think so, wench? Then why are you helping Tywin Lannister? You are working against Robb Stark, by bringing me to King's Landing," Jamie said. "I am serving Lady Catelyn," Brian retorted. Jamie snorted. "And if Lady Stark asked you to stab her son in the back, or bring her Jon Snow's head, would you do that? Lady Stark is a fool, and so are you. You are helping my father win. And Tywin Lannister always wins." The camp was quiet when Jon woke. He had dreamt of dragons again, flying over an ugly square of a city, miles and miles of cramped shabby structures. The roads were broad and lined with trees, but the inns, stalls, graveyards, taverns, and tanneries huddled together, like orphans begging in front of the great red keep. Aegon's city. Rhaegar's city. Not mine, Jon thought. I have never been there. The smell of blood and fire was heavy in the air, or was that still the dream? At night, the wind blew from the fields to the lake, and despite the best efforts of the army and the prisoners, there were still bodies to be buried. In a week, they will all be buried, and even the unknown soldiers would be burned to ashes and placed 6 feet below. A gloomy half-light filled his tent. Jon did not feel the chill. He had thrown off the blankets last night, even without the presence of Ghost. He washed his face in the cool water of the basin, and donned his clothes. He strapped a blade to his belt but wore only boiled leather. He didn't even need that. Eddard Carstock, Daisy Mormont and Wendell Mondaly guarded him during the day. The youngest Carstock strapped a thick shield to his maimed left arm, and could still fight well with a heavy axe. Not as quick, but Northmen were tough. The sun had not risen high enough to burn off the grey fog. John walked to the God's Eye, and to the quays and posts that dotted the shore. Even through the fog, he could see the boats bobbing on the water, and the arms and buckets of the catapults and siege machines sticking into the air, ready to unleash a forest of missiles. "Milord." John acknowledged the bows and waved them back to work. The small folk and villagers had spent the last few days cutting down timber, fitting masts and sails, and building more ballista. These were small machines, suited for quick boats that could sail down the black water. The stones and bolts were not strong enough to damage city walls. He would need to build larger weapons for that, if the army ever got closer to King's Landing. The cogs, carracks and galleys docked on the God's Eye were not the Iron Fleet. Even the stoutest Byam had only a dozen pairs of oars. But John could still use the ships. He could sail them down the blue-green river to the Blackwater Rush. He could supply his forces from the river, and transport men quickly to attack the Crown lands. The source of the Mandaya was only 50 miles from the Blackwater. The upper reaches of the great river were muddy but rough, but rafts and skiffs could sail into the heart of the reach. He might even reach Cider Hall before the Tyrells were aware of the invasion. Before the Targaryens came, the Ironborn had used the rivers to terrorize their enemies. He could do the same. But, he did not control the Northern Army. Robb commanded the troops. He had vowed to stand by his brother's side in war. "I will not betray Robb," John thought. "He is my liege lord." The voice inside whispered that was a lie. "Robb Stark may have been Warden of the North and head of House Stark, but you are the king, the blood of the dragon. You were born to rule, to restore Targaryen rule, and exact retribution for his dead brother and sister. Fire and blood, those were the words of his house. Fire and blood." He sensed the wolf before he saw anything through the fog. Then again, Nymeria was taller and broader than his sister. Arya handed over half a loaf of warm bread with a dollop of honey. "Are you still angry at Robb?" she asked. John took a bite. The bread was delicious, like most of Hot Pie's baking. "I am not angry." "You are a terrible liar," Arya said. He chuckled. "I suppose I am. I have never been good at trickery or hiding my thoughts." He was not ghost, silent as the grave. "You think Robb is wrong for waiting and not attacking," Arya said. "There comes a time in every battle and every war where both sides are exhausted and consider themselves weak or beaten. He who continues the attack wins," John said. "Or she could win as well," Arya said stubbornly. John nodded. "Or she. Our war with the Lannisters has not ended. We need to continue fighting. Negotiating or trusting Tywin Lannister or Joffrey Baratheon is a dangerous game. I want to kill all of them. Tywin. Cersei. Joffrey. Trant. Eileen Payne. The entire Kingsguard. Everyone who has made our family suffer," Arya said. "They are all at King's Landing, sister. And that is where I wish to go," John said. Late that morning, when the sun had burned away the fog, John and Arya stood in the tent with the other lords. He kept his eyes on Lord Karstark. Even with Eddard's recovery, Karstark was gaunt and wild-eyed, his long grey beard unkempt. He stared at Catelyn with something worse than anger. Contempt. The Lord of Carhold felt only contempt for Lady Stark. Robb sat in the middle next to his lady mother. That felt wrong. Catelyn Stark should be lower. She needed to show more remorse than a bowed head. "My lady mother has confessed to freeing Sir Jaime Lannister. She did so to ensure the safety of my sister Sansa Stark. For her punishment, I send her back to Riverrun under guard and she will remain in the Wheel Tower," Robb announced. "Is that it, Lord Stark? Is that your justice?" Karstark asked. "She will be imprisoned in the tower. She will not give any counsel for the war," Robb said. Karstark spat on the floor. "You mean, she will not be allowed to betray the North further?" Lord Ricard, I know you are wroth. I would make amends. Catelyn said. If you were a man who freed Jaime Lannister, I would challenge you to a duel. Instead, my men will hunt for the Kingslayer. We will search for him in the Riverlands. We will find him and kill him. Ricard grunted. My lord, the army must stay together. We cannot allow our host to separate. Robb said. If it is not treason to free Lannisters, how can it be treason to hunt them down? Surely you want prisoners, Lord Stark. Or do you mean to send me to my room as well? Lord Karstark stood up, and walked out. Outside, Karstark cavalry had already saddled their horses, ready to ride, and Karstark infantry formed lines, their tents packed last night. Robb had just lost 2,000 men. A remorseful Eddard turned his face away and joined his lord father. Fools, they were heading in the wrong direction. Jon was certain that they needed to march south. Author's notes. I will address quickly the vitriol I have received on Catelyn releasing Jaime. I have mapped out how I want the war in the Riverlands to go, and Jaime going to King's Landing is a piece of the story. The betrayal of the Starks is also part of the story as well, and I will just say it is part of the hero's arc. The villains, Tywin, Baelish, Varys, these are people who win by treachery. Some will say this was not the best decision. Catelyn should have done nothing, and they are right. Bad decisions are part of the Game of Thrones. Ned not telling Jon his mother's name was a bad decision. Theon betraying the Starks was idiotic, and Bran not telling others his vision even stupider. Daenerys sitting on her ass in Meereen for many chapters was stupid. So in this context, Catelyn releases Jaime to make certain that Sansa won't be killed after the battle. Before the battle, everybody thought the North would lose. 18k to 19k tired men against the Reach's heralds of chivalry, 35k to 40k strong, the bets to win would not be on the North. Robb says, Jon and I have a good plan, but do you blame Catelyn for her doubt? And do you blame Robb for keeping the plan to himself? And the offer from Tywin is not canon. Some will claim that I despise Catelyn versus a heroic Jon. You are entitled to your thoughts, but Catelyn is a mother, and she cares a great deal about her daughter. Enough to screw over her son's war effort, I say, yes. Just like capturing Tyrion was incredibly damaging for Ned Stark and the Riverlands. As for Jon, his decision-making has flaws too. He is still 16, and he is not as ruthless as he should be. I read a good book recently with a protagonist who is amazing. I won't go into names, but the hero completely screwed up a decision where he allied with someone who literally stabbed the party in the back. As a result, a party member was killed, and he was captured and tortured. Now I am sure the writer would have been accused of bad decisions, etc., but it was part of this hero's journey. And that journey was awesome. There is always a suspension of belief, but I think the notion of Brian as a great fighter is way off. Brian is stronger than Jaime Lannister, but that is not how fighting works. Speed and skill are crucial too. Arya Stark, and Jaime Lannister is described as wicked fast. The quest to return Jaime Lannister to KL is a very strange thing. First, Riverrun is 500 miles away from the capital. It is really hard to get there. I know in the books, Cleo's Free is with them and Sir Jaime is in irons, but Cleo's is a bad fighter. He fought like a goose. Second, in the first chapter of Storm of Swords, Jaime could have bashed her head with an oar while she swam in her armor. I really believe that if Jaime was alone, he would have killed Brian and just tried to go to KL. Incidentally, if you read the chapter closely, Jaime claims he was drunk when he swore the vows, and therefore it doesn't matter if he returns Sansa and Arya. This obviously is the whole Jaime is a true knight and will be redeemed arc. How did he get drunk in a jail? Did Catelyn Stark force-feed him wine? I personally think Catelyn Stark made a terribly short-sighted bet in the books. It is not different from Doran's bet on Viserys. That was a terrible long-sighted bet. Given that Varys orders little boys with their tongues cut out from Illyrio, it is hypocritical of him to criticize the Lannisters. But then again, hypocrisy has never been an issue with the Spider. The new model for prisoner treatment is based on the fall of Acre in the Crusades. Acre was a city in modern-day Israel. After a year and a half, Richard the Leon-Hearted took the city. He offered an exchange of 2,000 Muslim prisoners for 1,600 Christian captives, 100,000 gold and the True Cross. Saladin accepted the deal, but a month later, the ransom had not been paid. So Richard took all of the prisoners from Acre to a small hill where in full view of the enemy army, he massacred 3,000 soldiers, women and children. Saladin then executed 2,300 Christian prisoners in Syria. And Richard the Leon-Hearted is considered one of the noble medieval kings. The phrase "John has the north in him" is from Tyrion's comment to Jon Snow in their first meeting. I know that Tyrion was freed to bring a proposal to his father, and that Joffrey killed Ned Stark before that he returned to the Lannister camp. Chap 15, but Sansa doesn't see it that way. She thinks the Lannisters are all liars. Which actually is less fair to Tyrion and Jaime, the ones with the worst reputations, and correct for Tywin, Cersei and Joffrey. The first chapter of A Storm of Swords features Jaime on the run. Catelyn, with a sword at Jaime's heart, makes him swear oaths. Everyone makes a big deal about Jaime's redemption and giving Oathkeeper to Brian. But in the book, Jaime also swears to never take arms against Stark and Tully. One book later, he is sieging Riverrun and threatening to kill Edmure's son. So, broken oath there. Of course, you have to wonder how valid an oath at sword point is. The same chapter where Catelyn tells Robb that she freed Jaime Lannister, Robb tells her he married Jane Westerling. So it is a clusterfuck of enormous proportions. And people say this story has too many weird assumptions. The North basically blows themselves apart in a single chapter, along with many terrible decisions, Robert Glover invading the Crown Lands, Robb trusting Roost's bastard with taking back Winterfell. It is basically a huge disaster, and it is a credit to GRM's writing that we don't think the passage of Robb spouting off on love's not wise and we must follow our hearts isn't completely moronic. First of all, he knew Jane for about a week or so. Second, he says these ridiculous words in front of the Northern Army commanders. It is like a Harlequin passage, except terrible things will happen. Robb's reaction is different here. He realizes that the Kingslayer will cost him the respect of his men, certainly Karstark. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood, can lead to victory. This is a quote from Julius Caesar where Brutus argues they should march to Philippi to fight Mark Antony and Octavian. The ironic thing is that in this case, this was the wrong advice. Jon knows he is throwing the dice, but he wants to seize the day and press on the attack. He fears that there will be more breakdowns in the army, and other traitors. Robb worries about Sansa's fate, and knows the battle will be uncertain. He will be outnumbered and on enemy terrain. The complete quote comes from Clausewitz, a Prussian general. The end for which a soldier is recruited, clothed, armed and trained, the whole objective of his sleeping, eating, drinking and marching is that he should fight at the right place and the right time. This is an extremely useful lens to analyze why people won or lost, despite numbers and terrains. It helps to explain why Alexander the Great, Hannibal, Caesar and the Mongols consistently beat the odds. In the books, Jaime is in chains when released. But that means he literally has to make a trip over 500 miles of war-torn land in chains. And he can still kill Brian anyway. He just needs to wrap the chains around her throat and strangle her. So if you are going to travel that far, you might as well have him unchained. This isn't Midnight Run. There is this notion that people do not fear Tywin because he lost a few battles. That might be true if you have no memory of the sack. But I see Tywin as the ruler who would rather destroy his kingdom than lose power. Even in a corner, he is dangerous. So until he is dead and buried, you would be a fool to underestimate him. And that is something anybody who lives close to King's Landing would understand. I am never quite sure what GRM thinks knighthood. Brian is the closest to the true knight archetype and yet, she is quite naive. She is clever enough to avoid the obvious traps, but almost Sansa-like in clinging to her oaths. And it is funny in a sense, she is sworn to protect Sansa and Arya, but Arya does everything herself. Sansa is freed by Theon. The quote is from Ulysses Grant. In every battle, there comes a time when both sides consider themselves beaten, then he who continues the attack wins. Of course, there is more to that. The North became experts at the art of the indirect attack by the end of the war. I reread some of the chapters around the release of Jaime. There were many signs that the northern efforts were falling apart. Some of that came from Roose Bolton. He sent infantry under Robert Glover into a disastrous attack at Duskendale. It is hinted that Tywin Lannister had full knowledge of the troop movements from Bolton. The treason quote comes from the Storm of Swords after Rickard Karstark has killed Willem Lannister and Shenfrey and several guards. It is not clear to me how soon Lord Karstark killed the prisoners after Catelyn fesses up to freeing the Kingslayer. By then, Karstark men had already left to search for Jaime Lannister. The fundamental point I am making is that the decision to free Jaime Lannister destroyed the discipline of the Northern Army. You can certainly argue that with Roose and Walder free plotting, that discipline was in the crapper, along